Thank you. I will call this meeting to order. We first acknowledge land acknowledgement. We begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards and caretakers of the land. We acknowledge that the town of Wasaga Beach is located within the boundaries of Treaty 18, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Tino-Nan-Tati, Wendat, and is the home of many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples as part of an intricate nationhood that reaches across Turtle Island. At this time of truth and reconciliation, we welcome the opportunity to work together towards new understandings and new relationships and ask for guidance in all we do. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interests before we begin? No? Okay. Not seeing any at this time. However, if you do have one throughout the meeting, please do declare it at that time. Moving along, community services, section 3.1, deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. We have two. First, from Sonia Reichel, and she is accompanied by Rob Peacock. Where are we here? From Georgian Triangle Humane Society, pertaining to Regional Center for Pets and People. Sonia, we'll pass the floor over to you.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here with you all this morning. My name is Sonia Reichel, and I'm the Executive Director with the Georgian Triangle Humane Society. So click, scroll. Perfect. This morning I'm going to take an opportunity to talk a little bit about the Georgian Triangle Humane Society, what we do, some challenges that we are currently facing, some solutions we'd like to propose to those challenges, and a partnership opportunity. But first, I'd like to start with a thank you. The Georgian Triangle Humane Society, in the 10 years I've had an opportunity to work with the organization, has benefited from a long-term, robust relationship with the town of Wasaga Beach. So thank you so much. We have been your pound provider, receiving stray dogs that are picked up within your municipality. They come to our Humane Society. They stay with us for a period of time before hopefully their owners come for them. Otherwise, we get them fixed and vaccinated and microchipped and put them up for adoption. As well, you have partnered with us over a number of years for accessible spay-neuter surgeries, mostly for feral cats. As they are found within the municipality, they don't have owners. Through programming that we have worked on together, now they have an opportunity to get fixed at our hospital and get re-released into the community without the ability to reproduce and continue to grow those populations. And so we just thank you for the relationship and the understanding that together we can make the lives of pets and people so much better in our communities. A little bit about us, because we've been growing with leaps and bounds. We have about 1,500 homeless animals that come to us on an annual basis, and about 3,000 people in our community that come to us with their pets, and we work with them to help keep those pets out of the shelter system. We have about 1,600 spay-neuter surgeries that we provide to the public every single year. So within our Humane Society, it's a 6,000 square foot building on 10th Line in Collingwood. We have a tiny little fully accredited companion animal hospital that provides spay-neuter surgery to our own animals that come in, the homeless animals, as well as provides access to spay-neuter surgery to the public. So that means that if you're a member of the community and you can't afford to get your pet fixed, but you want to, you can get it fixed at our facility. And we have about 8 clients that come to us from the public on a daily basis. The numbers that we have, and I think it's in the next slide, but it's worth saying now, we have about 350-ish clients that come to us on an annual basis from Wasaga Beach. Our organization has about 27 staff and 250 volunteers. We have outreach programs that work to help pet owners during times of distress. So those are pet pantry programs like Pet Food Bank. We last year distributed 18,000 meals in our communities. We have emergency boarding for women that are fleeing domestic violence. We can help to keep their pets because we know they will otherwise delay leaving a home in those situations. We have emergency medical assistance programs. So that is if someone, a pet owner has an emergency with their pet and they can't afford to cover the cost, instead of having to euthanize their pet or surrender it to the Humane Society, we work together with that pet owner to help them keep their pet. And this is really important because many members of our community benefit from the human-animal bond, the wellness that their pets provide them, especially during times like we've all experienced during COVID. Pets get them out of bed in the morning, help to get them out into society, help to relieve loneliness and isolation. And so keeping their pets during those times is really critical to their wellness. And this is a list of the programs that we provide, as they range from adoption. We run a thrift store. We have youth programs, lost and found programs, really working again around pets and people through innovative and compassionate programs and services. And I want to touch really quickly on our programming for youth. We know that youth these days are really struggling with mental health. Back in 2017, we opened a program for youth through funding through the Ontario Trillium Foundation. And that allowed us to provide after-school programs, get into classrooms, hire a teacher, and develop programming all around teaching youth how animals think, feel, and communicate. When we were able to do that, we have measured an 18% increase in their social and emotional skill development, which seamlessly translates to their mental health. By learning about how animals think, feel, and communicate, they are connecting with peers. They're connecting with their teachers and their parents, and they're improving in their mental health. And we have 2,000 youth from our communities that come through those programs every single year. The Humane Society is really busy, is what I'm trying to say. And then this is a little bit more about our partnership. As I mentioned before, we are a pound provider for the town of Wasaga Beach. We have free spay-neuter surgeries for feral cats. One day per month, we transition our hospital and it becomes what we call a community cat stay. And that means that about 30 cats come into the hospital. They're in traps because they're wild cats. They get fixed and they get returned back to their original environment. I'm sure you know about huge pockets of feral cat populations that are within the town of Wasaga Beach, and we have been working in the community for years and years to help reduce those populations, make sure that it's safe for the community, we don't have the spread of rabies and disease, but also the welfare of animals in this municipality is high. As well, as I said, we accept in stray and surrendered dogs, so anyone that finds a stray cat in Wasaga Beach can bring it to our facility, and if they're looking, they can no longer take care of their cat or their dog, they can bring them into us. And finally, as I mentioned before, our public spay-neuter hospital is readily utilized by your citizens. But we have a challenge that we're facing. The building that we are in right now was designed 25 years ago with the intention of being able to accommodate 500 homeless animals on an annual basis. Today, we accept in 1,500 and 3,000 people come to us and we work with them to keep their pets in their home. We're beyond our capacity. There's no parking, there's no housing for the animals. We're on top of each other, and I'd love an opportunity to be able to illustrate that in person in the future. We need to think about our future, especially with the growing populations of this regional area. And to that end, we have a dream for the future. We have secured 5 acres of land in the town of Collingwood, and we're in the middle of a design development phase for a 20,000 square foot building that is going to cost $15 million to build. The intention of this project is going to be to open the doors for that building in 2026. And yes, 15 million is a large project, and anyone who's building right now can understand why that cost is so high. We are anticipating in this building to have 30,000 visitors come to us on a regular basis, on an annual basis, I should say, because it's going to be a hub for our community. It will have a community room where now those youth programs, those programs for seniors will have a center where we can work to grow them. It'll have a companion animal hospital that'll be 3 times the size. It will allow us to anticipate a double in the number of homeless animals that will come to us and be able to accommodate them within that facility. It will have 600 volunteers and 50 full-time staff that will operate this facility for our communities. To make this dream a reality, we are having conversations with the 6 municipalities that we serve, you being one of them. We are in the middle of deputations for all of those 6 municipalities, the final one being on February 1st. We are asking for thoughtful consideration around a $250 million gift over 4 years that will help us to reach our goal of $1.5 million collectively amongst the 6 municipalities that we serve. And that is the reason for my presentation today, and I thank you so much for the opportunity to be here in front of you all.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Sonia? Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sure you meant 250,000 over 4 years, not million.
Oh, yeah, yes.
So we can breathe.
I'm obviously thinking in the millions. Thank you very much for that clarification.
No problem. First of all, I'd like to thank you for this presentation. I've had the pleasure to visit the current Humane Society in Collingwood over the years, and I can tell Council it's a busy place.
Thank you.
And I had the fortune to be on vacation the last couple of weeks, and I was in Florida. And what I can tell you about their humane societies and their organizations that look after pets is that they are on the news, radio and TV, constantly, and the commercials are heart-wrenching. Absolutely heart-wrenching. There are a lot of organizations could look to the SPCA and humane societies on creating commercials that grab people's hearts if they want to get money, let me tell you. But it's just the truth. It's just the harsh reality of our pets and what they face. So I had the pleasure to speak with yourself and your colleague a few minutes ago, and I think it's important that we arrange for council to do a tour of the facility and to be able to see it, touch it, feel it, so as that we can move forward with some even more knowledge as to how important this service is to our community. And I want to thank you for everything you folks have done over the years for our community, especially with our feral cat population. It is a problem and still is. I don't know that we'll ever get that under control.
Oh, we will.
But I was very interested to hear about, and I'd like to hear more about the youth program. I thought that was kind of out of the box thinking for what it is that humane societies would normally do, but I really like the idea. So maybe we could get some more information on that in future. You'd mentioned that 350 people annually from Wasaga Beach came to your shelter for spay and neutering and so on and so forth. So is that, if they can't afford it but they want to keep the pet, that's a free service to them?
So that's an accessible service is what we call it. Typically to get a pet fixed at a traditional veterinary hospital, you'll be looking at between $500 and $2,000 all in. So to get your pet fixed through the Humane Society, for a cat neuter, for example, it's $100, including vaccinations and a microchip.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Eagle?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Sonia. I've had the pleasure of listening to you speak before, and there's another little part you forgot to, or did not have in the program today that I think is very important for people to know. We know there's a women's shelter in Collingwood, my friend's house, and we've heard them speak. And because I have sat on shelter boards before, I realized, or at that time, we realized there's a great problem when many families women wish to leave their home and they don't want to leave the animal, and children do not want to leave that animal. And I understand that your shelter has a program that will help that family, will take care of that pet while the woman goes to shelter. Maybe you'd like to expand on that a tad?
Absolutely. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
bringing that up. We know that 56% of women will delay leaving a situation of domestic violence if a pet is in the home. And we have a great partnership with My Friend's House, where we have launched an emergency boarding program. It was about 4 years ago now. And we are able to, through that partnership, facilitate keeping a pet during a time when a family is fleeing a dangerous situation, keep their pet for them during that time, make sure they get medication and food and care, and really provide hope at the end of a tunnel when they really need to be focusing on getting back up on their feet. And that program, I would like to also mention, applies to homelessness, which is during times of housing insecurity, something that is really prevalent in our communities as well. And we've had some incredible success with. I can't tell you how moving it is to see a family reunite with its pet after they have gone through a horrendous situation. And they have told us time after time, this has been the hope that has gotten them through that situation, the light at the end of the tunnel. And so thank you very much for allowing me to speak on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Councillor DeLeo. I'd like to thank you for making the connection between animal care and human health, because in these times where so many of our vulnerable citizens are obviously a top priority, some might question, the financial contributions towards the health of animals, but it is extremely important. And again, adding to Councillor Ego's comments, it is common too of many humane societies to work with senior residents where they take animals in just on a temporary basis to interact with the seniors, and for the health benefits to people suffering from Alzheimer's and dementia and different things. This is a huge impact on their quality of life, and you didn't mention that, but I believe you do some of those, so I don't know if you want to talk to that, but again, this is really has to be viewed as a part of our health services to all of our citizens, and thank you very much for the presentation.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I wouldn't mind saying a few words. It's the Human Animal Bond Research Institute that says that pets are an essential element to human wellness. And they have measured decreases in anxiety, depression, social isolation, just even from petting a pet. Prior to COVID, we had what we call them pet therapy programs, where we would have retirement residents come out to the Humane Society, or we would go out to them. And then COVID kind of stagnated things for a little bit. Now we're getting back up and running, and it's one of the reasons we are so excited about this Regional Center for Pets and People, because it will have an 1,000 square foot community room where all of that work around wellness and pets can have one space in our communities where that can really be facilitated, and we can work to grow and develop those programs. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
I'd like to point out, Sonia, that I'm very grateful for what you guys do. Most people out there know that I am an animal lover, so I thank you for that. And I'm impressed that you're doing the catch and release program. It really relieves a lot of the animal rescue groups that are involved in that, because I have dealt with them many times, so it relieves them a lot, and it's a great thing for the community. They don't have to, they get more relief out of that, so I thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Okay. I will now read the motion that the Community Services section of Coordinated Committee receive the deputation from the Triangle.
Sorry, Councillor DeLeo.
Sorry.
Sorry, just if I can step in for a moment. The current motion before council does just say to receive the deputation today for information, but I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a request.
Yes, it was a request.
So we would look to, if council is supportive, to amend that motion. I'm not sure. I also might want to defer. I know the treasurer was just here. I'm not sure if, maybe would this be something that could go to the grant program as well, or?
Thank you, through your worship. Certainly staff can review this matter. I'm not sure that the grants program would be the right program. However, we can certainly bring back information of how that could be accommodated.
Thank you, Jocelyn. So, Councillor DeLeo, you would continue to read the motion that's in your package right now, and then we would add on, if council is supportive, obviously, that we would amend the motion that further the matter be referred back to staff for further review and report to come back to a future meeting.
Would you like to read the motion on that?
Before we do that, is that something council is supportive of, amending that motion to change? Okay.
Yes? Yes.
So Councillor DeLeo would read that the Community Services section of Coordinated Committee received the deputation from the Georgian Triangle Humane Society for information, and further that the request be referred back to staff for a report and further information to come back to a future meeting.
Thank you, Clerk. Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mayor Smith and seconded by Councillor Belanger. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Moving on, 3.1.2, deputations. Next up, we have Mr. Herb Shields from TC Energy pertaining to Ontario Pumped Storage Project. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Shields.
Test, test. Audio's okay? Excellent. Thank you very much, Mayor and Council, for having TC Energy do our delegation here regarding the proposed Ontario Pump Storage project. This presentation has been conducted with the Simcoe County staff, as well as Clearview Mayor and Council, as well as some municipalities in the County of Grey. This is an opportunity for TC Energy to provide any newly elected officials where the project footprint lies with an update on our project, so everyone has the same information at the same time before we begin any regulatory proceedings that should begin sometime this year. So what is pump storage? What is this battery? So TC Energy is proposing to build Canada's largest battery in the municipality of Meaford because TC Energy has seen the Ontario energy grid and we forecast that as we decarbonize Ontario's energy grid, we've removed coal, we will remove natural gas, that slice of the pie has to be replaced with something. Ontario is contemplating new nuclear, more wind, more solar, more conservation, and more imports of zero-emission energy from other jurisdictions. So over the next 30, 40 years, we anticipate there'll be a lot of flux in the Ontario energy grid, and that flux from intermittent power sources, from power sources from outside Ontario, is going to require a stabilizer. And this is what this grid-scale battery provides. It provides an opportunity for Ontario to have more reliability and more certainty in its flow of energy in Ontario, and enhances then the attractiveness of Ontario for investment, and also a zero-emission power source for Ontario. So think of it as a big electricity insurance policy for Ontario for the next 40 years or more. I mentioned grid scale. This is a large battery at 1,000 megawatts of capacity, and that would power about 1 million homes over an 8-hour period. To put that in consideration, Niagara Falls, the Stratton Beck facilities in Niagara Falls is just shy of 2,000 megawatts, so think of it as half the size of Niagara Falls. At 1,000 megawatts, this would displace natural gas-fired generation in Ontario, and if you made those calculations, that would reduce Ontario's greenhouse gas emissions by about 500,000 tons per year. And this facility, like large hydroelectric dams, would be in operations for multiple decades. This is the current proposed design of our pump storage facility in Meaford. So this is located on the Department of National Defence lands in Meaford. You can see here that there is a proposed artificial reservoir at the top of the Niagara Escarpment. There'd be a buried powerhouse underneath, like the reservoir, and then about a 3-kilometer or more tunneling system under the Niagara Escarpment into Georgian Bay, and about 800 meters or so into deep water in Georgian Bay, there will be a very large tunneling ring, about 1.5 kilometers in diameter. And from that ring, coming up from like the lake bed, would be about 20 risers. And those risers then would be taking water in at night or at off-peak times, pumping that water into that reservoir, and then during the day or when peak demand is needed, releasing that water back into Georgian Bay to generate electricity for Ontario. This design has gone through several reiterations based on public feedback, based on environmental group feedback, and so we want to ensure that we are designing in the public eye and being responsive to those concerns. You'll see here the location. People have asked, well, why Meaford? Why Grey County? Why this part of the world? So all the stars really had to align for this particular site to be located. So one, access to water. So Georgian Bay provides that. Access to elevation. So the Niagara Escarpment provides that. Access to markets. So as you can see, Barrie is close by, the Greater Toronto area is close by. So this provides the maximum value to the Ontario ratepayers. And then access to the actual water itself. So I'm sure Wasaga Beach is very familiar. There's a lot of private property on the lakefront. And working with the Department of National Defense, we were able to access the water with minimal disturbance to private property or other sensitive sites. And I'm sure for Wasaga Beach, this will be the most interesting component, is transmission. So we do need to export power out of this facility and also import power as we're pumping water up during off-peak times. So we have been looking at proposed transmission line routes. This route that is on your screen is one of the proposed routes that we are contemplating, which then also is reflective of the feedback that we've received from the community. So we are proposing a buried lakebed transmission line route from Meaford across Nottawasaga Bay to Wasaga Beach. So if you're familiar with Shore Lane, in that part of Wasaga Beach, we have secured a private property in that area where we would make landing from water onto land. It would continue to be a buried cable line through Wasaga Beach, across Beechwood, into then Clearview Township. And then at Stayner, in Clearview, there is an existing Hydro One transformer station on Regional Road 91, just outside Stayner. And then from there, between Stayner and Essa, there's existing Hydro One transmission lines which would be upgraded, and that's how the power then would be flowing across all of South Central Ontario. And that same transmission line routes would then be used for exporting power as well as consuming power for this project. I wanted to reiterate that we have been looking at our design in Meaford with some intensity because of the feedback we've received from the local residents and also environmental groups, especially when it comes to fish and fish habitat, water quality and safety. And so our designs have addressed those concerns, including multiple ways that we have to engage the community. So for example, as I've mentioned, we are burying our facilities as much as possible, so there's visual impacts are being minimized. We are undertaking buried tunneling systems that are diffuse, so to ensure that we're not kicking up sediment or other kind of debris on the lake bed to ensure water quality. And we're avoiding any near-shore activities to avoid sensitive fish habitats, especially around spawning grounds and other areas. So if we have multiple layers of change that addresses fish habitat, water quality, and safety, we're confident that this design reflects the feedback we received so far, and we're committed to ongoing changes as we go through the regulatory process. This is another example of what we believe the inlet-outlet systems will look like in Georgian Bay. So these inlet-outlet systems are about 12 meters in height. They are above the lake bed, so they're avoiding kicking up of sediment and other turbidity. And there are 20 of them spread out about 1.5 kilometers in diameter. So if we're slowing down the water and diffusing the water at this rate, our computer modeling has indicated that the rate of flow will be about 1 kilometer an hour, which is the equivalent flow of Georgian Bay currents that are already there. So if we're matching the currents, avoiding nearshore activity, avoiding the lake bed, it all adds up to minimizing or avoiding fish and fish habitat impacts. Construction. People have asked what this project is going to look like, and it'll look like more of a mining project than it will be a power project because of the extensive excavation we'll have to do into the escarpment. So these are pictures of what the construction will probably look like in our tunneling system. These pictures are coming from the City of Toronto. The City of Toronto has a wastewater treatment program called Ashbridges Bay, where they're building a deep tunnel into Lake Ontario to then diffuse wastewater from the City of Toronto. So they're using very similar construction techniques that we are proposing. So a large boring machine would be building this tunnel, about 12 meters in diameter, which would be about the size of this room. And they would have precast concrete to create that arch and stability, and then tunneling systems and electrical systems where people can maintain our facilities in that tunnel infrastructure. And then what's happening at the water itself. So we do have to attach these risers to our tunneling system. So we are proposing a similar construction technique that the City of Toronto has undertaken, where they have temporary platforms that would be in the lake. And then we'd have like caissons or risers that would be go into the lake, pump the water out, and then any construction happens in that sleeve or in that caisson. Drill down into the lake bed, attach our risers, and then remove the sleeves, remove the platforms, and so nothing is visible then from like the lake once construction is complete. Timing. So we have not filed anything with the federal government or the provincial government at this time. There will be a federal impact assessment that will be triggered because this is on federal lands. Ontario has determined environmental assessments at the provincial level will also be required, so that will be a coordinated process, as well as I'm sure local permitting is also going to be required for this project as we develop a clear understanding of like the exact footprint, the exact kind of watercourse crossings that we will have to undertake. But that is to say, this year, we're anticipating we'll begin that regulatory process. It'll be a 3-year regulatory process with multiple rounds of engagement, multiple rounds of formal consultation with municipalities and environmental groups. And then construction would probably begin in 2025 within a 4-year construction window for this project, with completion and then operations into 2030. So it is a long ways off, but decisions have to be made now in order to have a meaningful and transparent participation for feedback, and then proper construction following that. This is what we describe as a Made in Ontario economic development opportunity for Bruce Grey and Simcoe County. We do consider that Bruce Grey and Simcoe County as the local study area. And our capital expenditures are going to be about starting at the $4.5 billion price tag for this project. And our current forecasts now are that Bruce Grey Simcoe Counties is going to be the largest cohort of spend for our budgets. So the majority of our spend will be in Bruce Grey Simcoe County. The majority of our workforce is already here in Bruce Grey Simcoe Counties. And that's before we start implementing our local and Indigenous procurement and employment programs. So we want to make sure that the largest cohort actually increases in size. And we are working with suppliers, vendors, and also Georgian College to increase those numbers before construction takes place. The next few slides I'll kind of gloss over just to save on some time, but we are already investing in the area. So we do have some preliminary contracting with Makwa Kyle out of Owen Sound to do some fabrication work. Hatch out of Oakville, that also has regional offices, is providing some engineering and design facilities. And then Georgian College already has some contracts with us to do some data collection, as well as then long-term training and employment opportunities contracting as well. The next few slides are then a cross-section of support that we've already received from organizations, and it's a good cross-section of chambers of commerce, environmental groups, organized labor, that have all indicated that this is a very worthwhile project. It's a zero emissions project, and it's proving to be a substantial investment in Bruce Grey and Simcoe counties. So I'll conclude my presentation at this point. I'm sure I'm over time for my delegation, but please, if you have any questions, have any concerns, please reach out to us. I wanted to thank already the Wasaga Beach staff, the municipal staff that have already been working with us already on that Wasaga Beach property, and we look forward to having those ongoing conversations with Wasaga Beach staff. So I'll take any questions if you have, and I think also on the line I have some of my technical staff from design and lands as well, and they'll probably chime in if I can't answer them correctly. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Shields. Any question for Mr. Shields? Councillor Belanger?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, and as you indicated, communication through this entire process is extremely important. You used terms of the reduction of the carbon footprint, but it's my understanding that the electrical grid as it stands today is probably, does not have the capacity to supply to projected population growth and the transition to more heat pumps, more electric vehicles and charging systems, which are, all a requirement to reduce the carbon footprint. I know it's probably very difficult to project, but is there any projection as to what the impact would be on electrical costs to the typical resident, into the future versus not doing the project and continuing on with a more traditional approach?
Thank you, and through the chair, just before Christmas, the Independent Electricity Operator of Ontario released a report called Pathways to Decarbonization. It's on their website now, you can take a look at it, where they address these exact issues, trying to forecast what is the power grid in Ontario going to look like in the next 40 years as we decarbonize, but then also as everything also electrifies. Industry electrifies. Municipalities have to do more electric vehicle stations, not to mention then a growing population that also needs energy. So what's the forecasting for the amount of infrastructure that's needed? What's the investment price tag for that? And then also what's the benefits of like that kind of electrification? So if you have some spare time, you can take a look at that report. But I think the ISO staff that are impartial, they're professional energy planners. I think they put it in stark terms that the challenge, I think, is very significant for Ontario. That the entire infrastructure grid has to be renewed and upgraded if you're going to electrify. And it's going to take many decades to do that. The energy mix is going to be a mix. It will be more nuclear, it will be more wind, more solar, more conservation, and all those things have to work in tandem as a system to create value for like the ratepayer. So those costs are sustainable, but then also we do have a stable and predictable flow of power, so industry can actually work, the lights can stay on, and then there's that predictability and certainty in power so people can make those investments. So for the actual price tag per ratepayer, ISO will probably have to be the person to respond to that, but they are making those contemplations right now.
Councillor Belanger?
Thank you. Just to follow up, and again, my understanding is you use the term battery, and certainly electrical storage is, I'll call it in its infancy in some of the solutions that are being investigated. But it's my understanding that prior to storage, that it wasn't uncommon that we would go to great expense to generate electricity, but if there was a surplus, it was being sold to the U.S. at very low cost because it couldn't be stored. And if I'm hearing this project correctly, is that as you need demand, that reservoir is absolutely controlled, that you can manage flow to meet demand in real time.
Yes, and through the chair, I think that description is accurate. For many, many decades, Ontario has had the ability to generate surplus power, especially at night or off-peak generation. And in this part of the world, mostly from nuclear and hydroelectric development. And then at night, when demand is not needed, there is surplus power, and quite a bit of it. So Ontario, for many, many decades, has had to either sell that power at a steep discount or a loss to other jurisdictions, who, ironically, if I may put in a little dig, some American jurisdictions do have pumped hydro facilities. So ironically, they've been storing Ontario energy at night when they get it at a steep discount or at our loss, and then redeploy it in their jurisdictions during the day. So Ontario's kind of playing catch up, I think, with some other jurisdictions. And then, but I think to the point of ratepayers and value payers, those generators have already been built. That electricity is being generated already. And if you don't store it, it's like lightning in a bottle. You can't capture lightning in a bottle. You either have to sell it immediately or ground it into the ground. So this project is an opportunity to at least save a portion of that energy that has already been paid for, you're already generating, and then just redeploy it in Ontario when Ontarians need it.
Councillor Eagle?
Through the chair, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shields. Sorry. Just a straightforward question here, simple. I believe you said you have acquired land on Shore Lane from, yeah. So I'm just curious, is it a private home ownership or would it be land owned by the Government of Ontario already? Thank you.
Through the chair, this was a private acquisition from a private landowner, and we are working with the municipality of Wasaga Beach to ensure that we are compliant with the Wasaga Beach interests in that land, so it is privately held or freestanding land, and I don't know more I can answer at this point.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Your worship?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Shields, great presentation. Thank you so much. It's always interesting to see what we're going to do in the future when it comes to power. So not only thank you for the presentation, but thank your corporation for the forethought to be able to get us hopefully where we're going to need to be in order to become carbon friendly or carbon neutral. So a couple of items. How deep is this going to be buried? And have you looked at this point, and I understand it's still premature, safety issues, health issues for the residents of Wasaga Beach or wherever this may be?
Yes, and through the chair, so the actual the design of our buried cable line still has to be determined. So we are conducting that kind of research right now regarding design. We are looking at existing cable lines as the template to do that, as well as retaining engineers that have been doing buried cable lines and transmission lines in many jurisdictions for many decades. So regarding depth of cover for safety, we will be compliant with Ontario and federal requirements for transmission lines, whether they're overhead or buried. We will be compliant with those safety and health regulations. So like the depth of cover, I really can't confirm at this point, but there is going to be a depth of cover that addresses safety, addresses environmental impacts, so we're looking forward to providing that detail as we complete our engineering studies.
Your worship?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So one last question. With respect to the buried line in the lake bed, you spoke of inlet and outlet. So I'd be interested, I mean, we have the longest freshwater beach in the world here, and we want to make sure that it's safe and preserved and non-pollutant. Can you tell me, I'm more concerned about outlet versus inlet. What's that going to look like, and what are we sending back into the lake?
Yes, and through the chair, one of the benefits of this particular energy system working with water is that there is no change to the water. So there's no thermal activity, so we're not heating the water. There's no chemical treatment of the water. We are taking water at its source in deep water, about 15 to 20 meters below the surface, bringing that water up to an artificial reservoir for less than a 24-hour period, and then releasing that water back to its original state and location. If we are then slowing down that rate of flow to 1 kilometer an hour, again, kicking up of sediment or turbidity in the Meaford area can be minimized or avoided. And then that water itself, its status and its composition is not being changed as it goes through this through the system. We still have a lot more environmental surveys to do. So we have been on the water for over a year now and continue to be on the water to do exactly those studies. So look at water sampling, look at the flows of water, and then also for the cable line itself, conducting telemetry studies and more detailed survey studies of the lake bed to ensure we're avoiding any sensitive habitats, sensitive archaeological sites, and any other sites that we want to avoid to ensure that the lake bed itself is not being impacted or minimized, as well as then getting closer to the shore. Again, more of those studies are going to have to be completed to ensure that we're avoiding or minimizing those kinds of impacts.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions? Deputy Mayor Snell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would assume, like in regards to the fisheries and the habitats of the bay, I would assume that at the incoming part, there would be a micro screen or whatnot. What is the speed that you anticipate sort of sucking that water in? Is there going to be any disturbance to the wildlife in the water?
Yes, and through the chair, fisheries has been top of mind regarding as a group that we want to engage on this project, whether it's been our traditional fisheries and also the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation fisheries. So they've been part of our designs and feedback on this process. And they're continuing to work with us as we refine this design. Regarding the design itself, the inlets, there is screens on these inlets for this exact purpose, as you described, to avoid any impacts to fish and fish habitat. Inside the screens themselves, there'll be baffles. So think of it as two pyramids that kind of come together at a point in the middle. Again, it's an additional screening, an additional layer to slow down the water. So for our inlet and outlet components, the flow of water will be very similar, about 1 kilometer an hour. So for slowing down the water as we're taking it in and slowing down the water as we're taking it out, it mimics the existing currents in Georgian Bay, again, to avoid then those kinds of interactions with fish and fish habitat. And as I mentioned before, layering on top of that, avoiding nearshore activities, and then another layer is in that particular part of Meaford, outside the D&D base, there's a 1 mile wide safety zone around the base where commercial fishing, recreational boating really should not be taking place. So people can traverse through that zone with the permission of D&D. But being there for any extended period of time is really not advised. So again, that's another layer of safety that we can provide to boaters and the fisheries.
Deputy Mayor Snell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. During the election, I was chatting with some residents in the west end of town, and I think the land that you purchased is off of Constance. Is that correct?
Let me just check right here on Google Maps. So it's Shore Lane off Beach Drive, and actually, I think your staff can probably even confirm that. Actually, they might be even in the best position. I'll defer then to.
I can certainly speak to that. It's actually the lands. If there is a Betty Boulevard extension, if you're familiar with Betty Boulevard extension, we have an existing sewage force main along there, so it's immediately east of Betty Boulevard extension and north of Shore Lane. So it does not include Constance per se. There are some properties that back onto that subject property, but it's more Shore Lane and Betty Boulevard extension.
Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Mr. Shields, for enlightening me, because I read the report and I was confused, or I looked at the presentation. I do see that there is a motion to accept the report for information, but on the second last slide, there are a couple of asks for town staff. And my question is this: are town staff already working on the reviewing the upcoming impact assessment and sharing the project data with local vendors and suppliers?
Yes, through the chair, TC Energy does have an ask of municipalities. It's a cost-free ask. Our ask is to just participate through the regulatory process. So whether the federal government or TC Energy will be formally inviting municipalities to comment on a regulatory filing. So we're asking the staff to just continue having a relationship with us to share information. TC Energy is more than happy to share information as soon as we get it, to ensure that issues can be resolved, clarity can be provided, so that meaningful comment can be go through that process. Regarding economic development, I know many municipalities do have economic development officers, do have suppliers and vendors that you're aware of, and we encourage those municipalities to provide those lists to TC Energy. We want to maximize like the local content in this project as much as possible. We are collecting lists of vendors, suppliers that are in Bruce Grey and Simcoe County that would be potentially interested in this project. For example, if you look down at my feet, they're a little muddy right now. That's because yesterday I was at a very small family-owned excavation company in Meaford, checking out their yard, checking out their capabilities, and encouraging them to provide any information to TC Energy so that we can get pre-qualified for this kind of vending. We can provide introductions to larger vendors and larger contractors to provide that kind of content. So it's that kind of relationship building we want to have with local suppliers and vendors, and we're just asking municipalities, if you have a list, please share.
Councillor Timms?
As a follow-up, I've seen the property. When this is all said and done, what will that property look like? Because it's underground for the most part?
Yes, through the chair. So so what you're going to see at the property is everything will be below ground. So there will be no structures on this property. It will be a TC Energy owned property. We're in the business of power. We're not in the business of housing. Housing developments on our property are unlikely, and we'd like to work with like the Wasaga Beach staff on a vision for that property. And so there's been some ideas being discussed. So we want to be compliant with like the town's vision for that piece of property. And I don't know if Wasaga Beach staff want to add more to that, but we won't be doing anything without Wasaga Beach's input and advice.
Mr. Lalonde?
Thank you, if I may, through you. Just, yeah, we have been working with TC Energy as the new landowners, and it was a carryover from the previous landowner. We, as council may be aware, we do require and need a drainage easement and outlet along the westerly portion of the subject land. So we have been actively working with them to establish formal easements through that property, as well as a couple to the couple of landowners to the south. So that's instrumental in terms of us advancing the West End Elevated Water Tower site and West End Depot site. So we have a couple of other needs and wants that we hope to continue discussions with TC Energy on that regard as well, beyond just a drainage channel, but and we could bring that forward as they advance.
Any other questions? Your Worship?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think I can understand where Councillor Timms is coming from with respect to this lot that's now going to be there in a residential area. So I just want to, I guess, comment that we make sure there's assurances in place that this lot, although there will be no structure on it, it's going to be maintained. It's not going to be overgrown, and perhaps we can even look at some parkette or something there for the residents in the area.
Through the chair, TC Energy is more than happy to have those discussions with the municipality. I think staff have raised like these kind of options and vision. It's TC Energy's commitment that we want to be compliant with the municipality's vision as we develop like this energy project. And I think our record has demonstrated so far we are pretty flexible and responsive to what the communities have told us regarding the Meaford base, as well as like transmission options. And in addition to just transmission routes, the transmission technique, construction technique, is also reflective of I think the feedback we received. So as opposed to the buried cable line, I think it would be complementary to like the town's character, and TC Energy is more than happy to continue those conversations with with municipal staff.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Deputy Mayor Snell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a thought, looking at your website, obviously your company is extensive. Is there a plan in your strategic plans down the road to expand on this facility, or is this a one-off that you're looking to do, please?
Through the chair, I like your ambition. That would be lovely, but also we have to crawl before we walk. So TC Energy's focus right now is on this particular project as it's designed. And we want to make sure that this project happens in a compliant way, in a safe way, in an environmentally responsible way. And then if this project does take place and we develop a relationship with municipalities, we develop that reputation that we can be trusted and transparent with our plans, we would like to develop a longer-term relationship, but first things first is to focus on this project, and that is our focus in this part of the world right now.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Mr. Shields, for that wonderful presentation. Thank you. Okay, now I'll read the motion that the Community Services section of Coordinated Committee receive the deputation from TC Energy for information. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Tim, seconded by Mayor Smith. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Continuing 3.2 unfinished business. We have none. 3.3 other agency reports. 3.3.1 Fire Department monthly report. We have Fire Chief Williams to speak to that report.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, members of council. Today, I'd like to provide just a brief overview of the 2022 statistics, as well as talk about a fire that the town had earlier this week. But before I do, I'd like to ask permission from the chair to allow our new Deputy Fire Chief, Dan Bell, a few moments to introduce himself.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Chief Williams. Through you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Mayor and Council. I know you have a full docket, so I'm going to try to keep my comments brief. Although we have all briefly met informally in passing over the last few weeks, I'd like to formally introduce myself and thank you for the opportunity. I started in the fire service 27 years ago as a volunteer firefighter in Whitchurch-Stouffville, where I eventually was hired in 2004 as a career member, one of the earlier group that were hired in Whitchurch-Stouffville. I was able to work my way up to a full suppression captain in suppression in 2009, and then I took on the department training officer role, where I served until December of 2020. This includes the 6 months in convent as the deputy fire chief. At the height of COVID, I made the brave decision to move my wife and two daughters from the GTA to the Phelpston area when I accepted the deputy fire chief role with the township of Tiny. I've served there for the last 2 years before making the move here to Wasaga Beach. As I'm sure you are all fully aware, you have a truly amazing group of career staff and dedicated volunteer firefighters. And I really look forward to working with staff, Chief Williams, and working closely with Mayor and Council and to continue to grow and develop the department and municipality and provide the excellent customer service to the residents and businesses of Wasaga Beach that they all have come to expect and greatly deserve. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Deputy Bell. So I just wanted to start today with providing you some year-end statistics from 2022. Provincially, there were 133 fire-related deaths across the province. And this is the highest number of fire deaths that the province has experienced in over 20 years. Important to note that 1/3 of the incidents involving the deaths did not have working smoke alarms. In Wasaga Beach, we finished the year with 2,035 emergency responses, and we had 5 fire-related injuries. So these were smoke inhalation and minor burns. Through our fire investigations, we were able to determine that we had approximately $1.2 million of fire property loss. However, our crews were able to save just over $3 million worth of property. Our call volume was 10% higher than our busiest year on record, and we were able to complete 375 fire and life safety inspections and approximately 100 hours of community outreach programming. This past Monday, we had a residential structure fire near the intersection of River Road West and Zoo Park Road. Upon arrival, the firefighters found a working fire at the backside of the property with active smoke alarms. The owner and tenant were not home at the time of the fire, fortunately, and it was determined that there's just over $100,000 worth of fire loss, and the home is now not habitable. Our investigation determined that the fire started in an exterior electrical outlet that was likely overloaded with several extension plugs that were into the outlet. And I think this fire is a great reminder as to why we need smoke alarms in buildings. It's our only chance for early detection, which would allow, if there was an occupant home, the opportunity to get out of the house, hopefully before firefighters arrive. So I would like to leave it on that note, to test your smoke alarms, make sure they're working, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Fire Chief Williams? Your Worship?
Thank you. More a comment, Madam Chair. Deputy Bell, welcome. We're happy and honored to have you as part of the team. We've got a great chief in place, and there's no doubt that our firefighters, just as the rest of our staff here at the town, are very valuable and great folks. They work hard, and we appreciate that and what they do every day. I want to just touch quickly on the report, but first a comment. 133 deaths, the highest in 20 years. Is there anything in specific that we attribute that to? Is it lack of fire or smoke detectors? What's the cause, or do we know?
The lack of smoke detectors is definitely a contributing factor. We know that a third of these incidents did not have working smoke alarms. So again, that's your best chance to get early detection and escape the home, especially at nighttime when you might be sleeping. 3 major causes of fires are still cooking, electrical, and smoking inside the residence. So if we watch what we cook, we don't leave cooking unattended. We make sure we're smoking outdoors, and we make sure that the electrical equipment that we're using is safe, sound, and inspected regularly. Then we can prevent a whole lot of fires.
Thank you. And if I may, I think it's important to point out on Sunday, our fire department, I think, faced 15 calls, 2 of those being somewhat structure related. And I can tell you, I was just arriving back home. We stopped at a local establishment to have dinner. And in the hour that we were there, we watched our fire department scoot by one way or the other 5 times within the hour. It was quite substantial. And driving into town, they were, I think, dealing with a chimney fire on 45th Street. So again, I think it's important to point that out, that we're not sitting on our duffs at the fire department eating bonbons. We have quiet days and busy days, but I would say when we look at 2,035 calls, and that being up 10% from our highest year, that it's busy. So thank you again for all you do.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Fire Chief Williams. I will now read the motion. Resolved that the Community Services section of Coordinated Committee receive the December 2022 Fire Department report for information. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Belanger, seconded by Councillor Eagle. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Continuing on, 3.4, consent agenda. To my knowledge, 3.5.1 and 3.5.2 have been pulled. Is there anything else? No? Okay. I will now read the motion. Resolved that the Community Services section of Coordinated Committee hereby receive the January 9th, 2023 consent agenda items 3.4 through to 3.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agendas pulled from the motion and voted on separately. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor White and seconded by Councillor Belanger. All in favor? Passed unanimously. Okay, 3.5, departmental staff reports. I will now pass the floor to Deputy Mayor Snell for items 3.5.1.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question to Director Rose in regards to the wrap for the what are those things called? Zamboni ice machine. Thank you. I was just curious, as we discussed in the previous council, Councillor Belanger came up with the idea of perhaps splitting the space and doing a half wrap, which I thought was fantastic. When I looked at the numbers, if you add up the cost of the two, it's $34.50, but if I purchase the whole, it's $36.75. I would think the numbers would be the reverse, where two halves would generate more income than a whole. Thank you.
I think I understand, and I noted this sort of anomaly in numbers, and we truly just scientifically took the means of what the local comparables were that we collected, and we found that we were getting less money in communities where half wraps were being purchased, so we left the numbers like that. It's obviously the backup plan, and the hopes are that we get a good bid for the full wrap, but in the event that we don't, there's an option for everyone to offer a half price as well.
Any further questions? No? Okay, I will read the motion. The council approves selling an advertising wrap opportunity on the town's Olympia Ice resurfacer, utilizing the process outlined to qualifying parties. And further to that, council approve using the proposed Olympia Ice resurfacer advertising wrap agreement appended as Schedule B. Okay, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor Timms. All in favor? Passed unanimously. 3.5.2, I will now pass the floor to Councillor Belanger, and then we will go to Deputy Mayor Snell, and then to Councillor Eagle. Deputy Belanger? Sorry, Councillor Belanger.
Thank you, Chair DeLeo. Basically, I did not pull the item. I just wanted to make comment on the item, and I just wanted to indicate that the yearbook report, I'm getting older, so I don't recall seeing it in the same format last year, but I appreciated it, and I think when we look at the size of the department and the resources that contribute to that, it's certainly an indication that we get an awful lot done in a year, and there obviously was some very significant events and a lot of work going into those. I have often said with my involvement in the Blues Festival, a lot of people don't realize the kind of effort and the kind of planning and work that goes into it. I know just for that single festival, we have had an entire team work annually on those things. So this is a very good report, and appreciated it. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Snell?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too just had some comments. I was so happy to read that the department's considering Bike Week. I think that was one of the most cherished events in this town. I think it was hugely successful and greatly missed since its departure, so I'm excited to see that. And also to read that the Not So Pro is looking to come back to the beachfront where it belongs and should be. And I just wanted to also comment and congratulate on the Truth and Reconciliation carving. I came across it, I can't remember, I think it was during the election when I went to go vote and seeing it for the first time. And it's an absolutely beautiful honor to the community and to that very important communication piece. So just want to comment those three things. Thank you.
Councillor Eagle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, good morning. I too appreciated this calendar. I like visual, and it's good to have. Thanks. So I'm looking, though, at the ice usage, the hours of the ice usage, and I'm sure COVID has a huge impact on our hours. And just help me here, Chris. I come up with 3,378 hours of ice usage. So does that work out basically to about 40 days of maximum usage in a year? It just doesn't kind of make sense, but.
Certainly, through the chair to you, Councillor Eagle, we have this exact number for what was in fact 11 months of ice use. The arena was completely closed in, squealing. The arena was completely closed in the month of January, and beyond that, I did actually go back after we had a similar discussion in December, and I had a 5-year number. I'm sorry, I didn't know that this was going to come up, but we have circulated amongst staff, and we do intend to have a bigger discussion. But these numbers average out to give or take 10 hours a day, if you think about 365 days in a year. We took a month off, though, because the arena was forced to be closed over COVID. And generally, I can say that we have had analysis by external consultants before, and they talk about peak and non-peak hours. And you're right that maybe, I don't know the exact math but that you did, but if you talk about 40 days, maybe the arena is open 18 hours a day, something like 7 in the morning to 11 at night typically. But all of those hours are not peak. Certainly, I would generalize that evenings and weekends through the summer months, the typical hot weather months, are off-peak. We don't keep the arena open until 11 p.m. regularly in the summertime, and certainly weekends, our window closes somewhat. But the opposite exists during the school year. We probably are running somewhere around 50% of that 7 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon, and we reflect that in our pricing as well. We reduce the price during the day or the non-prime hours. Beyond that, I can say that our arena is quite busy. We certainly anticipate increases during our prime ice hours when we have 2 pads, and for the most part, we are running at peak hours, I would say 8 to 9 months a year, absolutely full from 4 in the afternoon until about 9 o'clock, 10 to 11 months a year. And those peak hours are where we really start to understand the demand, because it's when the bulk of the population is not in school and they're not at work. Other than that, I wasn't prepared with a complete analysis, but I did look back, and I can certainly verify that our numbers have gone up over the past 5 years. I think that was the direct question that we got from the mayor in this similar discussion in December.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris. Just further to that then, just moving forward as we go into the new arena, and this can be conversations later on just for us to know and the public to know, are there studies done, like do you have black and white on how you propose that more hours will be used in the arena? It's just a common question out there.
Certainly, I have heard this one as well. I think there is such a thing as a feasibility study. And no, we don't have one since, I think it was 2018, 2017, maybe CRB. We did do a study, and that was where we came up with this peak, non-peak discussion and sort of capacities that we expected in the new arena. There is a feasibility study coming forward for our older facilities, but at this point, we don't have a scientific planned approach. I think that, as you might understand, it probably takes a couple years to ramp up, but we have done some general projecting for revenue purposes on what we expect in those 2 pads, but no, I don't have a scientific analysis yet, and there isn't one in the current plans.
Councillor Belanger? Councillor
Just
Rigo?
in, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's come to council, and there's been quite a bit of discussion on this in the previous term of council, where there has been a number of organizations that have wanted to increase their ice times, and again, during peak usage, sometimes that was not available. So I'm pretty confident that 2 things are going to happen. One is we will have that available space for some of the organizations that have been requesting it. But I also believe that we are going to have the state-of-the-art facility within South Georgian Bay, and that has a tendency to attract increased usage. So I'm looking forward to a very busy new facility. Thank you.
Your Worship?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I did speak to this at a previous meeting as I worked out the numbers. So I've worked out the numbers on this again at 3,378 hours if we say that that's for 270 days a year. So we take out the summer and we take out the month that we were closed or thereabouts. It's about 12 and a half hours a day. So what I'd like to see is a report, and we do not need to hire a consultant to do this. Just a non-scientific report, if you will, that comes forward to council, at least for the arenas around Simcoe County and what their average hours are of ice time per year. And I ask that because there's absolutely no doubt that Wasaga Beach needs a new arena, and I'm happy to say that several councils have supported that and worked towards this. What we have is what we have, and it's going to be absolutely a phenomenal facility. There's no doubt in my mind, and the good folks Wasaga Beach deserve the best, in my opinion. But I want to be very careful as we move into the new facility that we're scheduling ice time, if you will, especially on the side that is going to host 800 to 4,000 people, that we don't end up, as we move forward and we do events and so on and so forth, for people that don't play hockey or don't figure skate or don't use ice time, that we don't end up with scheduling conflicts on a regular basis when we want or need that surface or that pad for events, so on and so forth. And I think if we start the process now, to make sure that we are scheduling that properly, that we'll avoid a lot of hassle down the road. So again, just be clear, be interesting to see what the average ice time is on a single pad or double pad arena throughout the county, so as that we have a good idea as to where we stand and where we need to go from here. Thank you very much.
Councillor Belanger?
Thank you, Chair. To the mayor's comments, through the process of looking at our new facility, certainly there are facilities that are built specifically to transition between ice and events. Sometimes that's a subfloor that goes over the ice, sometimes not. But do we know today that if we wanted to transition between, say, a concert or a trade show to ice usage and then back again, what the timeline looks like and what the potential cost might be, or is that something that we will look at going forward?
Certainly through the chair to you, Councillor Belanger, we have looked into this, talking with a number of our neighbors who have twin pad arenas with ice floors. Certainly some of you have seen our regular 5-year shutdown at the Wasaga Stars Arena, and it takes 5 to 6 weeks minimum when we take the frost out of the sand floor. Our new facility has a concrete floor, and the turnaround is roughly 10 to 12 days. So our plot is that, for example, if we had hockey and ice skating up until Sunday afternoon at 9, 10 p.m., then we would turn the ice plant off and start to take the ice surface out. And ideally, we would be ready for special events Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the coming weekend. And then we would use those following weekdays, sort of after the event, Monday to Friday, to build the ice back up, and we could be operational again by the following Saturday. So ideally scheduling periods like that. Now, as far as the cost goes, there definitely is an electricity cost to turn off the ice machine. We hear about this, maintain your house at X temperature. Even though the gas is running, it's better to do that than to let it cool down and turn it back up afterwards. And there is a sweet spot there, and I'm not exactly sure of the science. So definitely there is a power cost to the municipality to take the ice out and put it back in. Obviously, we're warming up the street water in order to create that ice, let alone taking the slab temperature up with the concrete. There's also ice maintenance, so we will be putting labor into this. We have to clean the paint and the lines out of the ice surface. It has to go through a sanitary drain, and then we have to repaint the ice surfaces. So if I would estimate with staff time and ice building, I would put the cost probably in the range of about $5,000, and I can't be certain about what the power costs are, but the building on an annual basis, I think we would see a small hiccup because of these shutdown and reopening of the ice surface.
Your Worship?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to that point, I'd like to see something come back to council, not only with the ice time, but I think we really will need to look at a different solution to that. I know that, I mean, these buildings are energy hogs at the very best of times. And if we're going to be taking ice in and out, and the labor and the time. So I look at this and say we've got 2 ice pads, but I'm quite confident that we'll use that second pad as often as we possibly can for special events and entertainment for our citizens here in town. And so if we have 2 or 3 weekends in a row, for example, where there's an event going on, it means we have 2 or 3 weeks or a month without any ice. I know that there are many arenas that have specific boards that are built, or platelets, whatever you want to call them, that connect together to sit down on top of ice that insulate, so you get rid of the cold or as much as you can, and you don't have to remove the ice surface. And yes, there is manpower to that, but it sounds to me like there's probably close to, if not equal, the manpower to remove the ice and put the ice back in, plus the electrical cost. But as importantly, we can probably put those, and easy for me to say, I'm not going to be the one out there doing it, thank the good Lord. But we can probably put those boards down in a day or so and then take them back up in a day or so. So we take 8 days out of that process. I think we really need to see something come back to council on the cost of those boards and the information required for council to make a decision on that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Any further questions?
If I may, just one more comment, so that everyone is clear. With the special event numbers, it always sometimes cycles on us, but to be exact, there are 840 fixed seats. So that would be sort of the ideal with no standing at a hockey game. But if we were to populate the ice surface with more chairs, the maximum on the floor is about 1,500. So 1,500 plus 800, sort of if we minimize the stage size and maximize the floor, we could do standing room only potentially to try and push that number up a little bit. But we're looking at pretty much maximum in that room, 2,500. And there are egress rules about that. We've got 8 single doors or 4 double doors to help people get out of the arena that were added in a special heating system as well. But 2,500, that's going to be our event size. I know often I talk with promoters and they're multiplying ticket prices, et cetera, and this is something that we should all get realistic on, that 2,500 is going to be our maximum, like a ticket sale type of event. Thanks.
Further questions? Your Highness?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just looking to the clerk, I want to see this report come back. So do we need to amend the motion?
Thank you, Your Worship. So if you wanted to put forward a motion to amend the current recommendation, and maybe perhaps to add another paragraph that would read, and finally, that staff bring back a report pertaining to, now correct me if I'm wrong, the costs and time associated with the installation and removal of the ice surface? Is that?
So there'd be 2 items there. One, I'd like to see staff bring a report back to council on Simcoe, other arenas in Simcoe County, single and double ice pads ice time, and how they have done that, what their ice times are to compare. And then secondly, a report and costing on the appropriate boards required or items required in order to put boards down on our ice, as opposed to removing the ice every time we want to do a special event or something else.
Madam Deputy, would you like to read the motion? Thank you.
Thank you. So we will ensure that we get the wording correctly on that, but I guess first, would you like to put forward a motion to amend the current motion to add that paragraph?
Yes, please.
And would we have a seconder for that? Okay, so the motion would now read the first 2 paragraphs that are there, Councilor DeLeo, and further that staff bring back a report pertaining to, 1, comparisons to other arenas in the area and the costs associated for appropriate items in order to do the installation and removal of ice surfacing.
If I may, Madam Chair, I'm quite confident the clerks will get this right, but yes, that's basically the gist of it.
So Councilor DeLeo, if you would like, I can read the the first two, and then we'll, so that council that the community services section of coordinated committee does hereby receive the recreation events and facilities monthly activity report as information, and further, that committee does also receive the 2022 year in review recreation events and facilities update appended to this report as information. And finally, and then we will insert that third paragraph there.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mayor Smith and seconded by Councillor Belanger. All in favor? Passed unanimously. So this concludes my section, and I will now pass the floor over to Councillor Timms for Public Works. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor DeLeo. Item 4.1, deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. We have none. Items 4.2, unfinished business. 4.2.1, River Resources Committee, Shaka Wasaga Beach Cruise request for no wake zone. This item is still pending. 4.3, other agency reports. We have none. Item 4.4, the consent agenda. All items listed below will be approved in one resolution. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests it, and in this case, items 4.5.1, 4.5.2, 4.5.4, and 4.6.3 have been pulled and will be removed from the consent agenda and considered immediately following adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. Therefore, resolve that Public Works section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the January 19th, 2023 consent agenda items 4.4 through to 4.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding the agenda items pulled from the motion, voted on separately. So may I have a mover? Councillor DeLeo, seconded by Councillor Belanger. All in favor? Carried. Item 4.5.1, Public Works. Deputy Mayor Snow.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled this one. It mentions in your report, Director Lalonde, about the boat launch design has been completed. I was just curious if you could provide some more information about that. Are we expanding or widening our boat launch at the Nancy Island area? Thank you.
Thank you through you, Councillor Timms, to Deputy Mayor Snell. The boat launch work is, as Council is aware, we're advancing the detailed design for the Beach Area 1, which includes upgraded storm sewer infrastructure. As part of that effort, we need to upsize and replace the existing storm sewer outlet at 2nd Street, which outlets right adjacent to the boat launch. We haven't completely advanced the detailed design. We've advanced the survey. The design efforts are actually as part of this year's budget to advance, but it's really just to address, there is an issue with the ramp, the concrete ramp, its condition, the drop off at the end of the ramp, certainly with boats trying to back their trailers down and getting caught or perhaps stuck. So we recognize that issue, and we're hopeful that as part of the overall design for the storm sewer outlet, we can address that design concurrently with our design consultants. And then in the near future, as we advance the construction, perhaps of Beach Area 1, Phase 1, that storm sewer upgrade, we could address that ramp issue concurrently with that contract. So that's the scope of that work, if that answers your question.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you. Just a comment. I'd love to see the boat launch widened. Getting in and out of there on a busy, sunny Saturday is a real challenge, you know, and almost becomes a bit of a hazard because you get jet skiers or paddleboarders or kayakers trying to load or offload on the left side, and then you've got, you know, motors running on the right side. So I'd love to see that expanded if that could be up for consideration. Thank you.
Are there any further questions or comments?
Just if I may,
yes,
Madam Chair. Certainly we'll explore that. There is a limitation in the road allowance there, and as you're aware, the adjacent parking lot is provincial parkland, so we would have to work with our friends, the Ontario Parks, to acquire some property to consider any widening in that location. But comment made, and we'll look at that as part of our design.
Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm assuming, Director Lalonde, we have 66 feet there for that boat launch. Is that the road width, or it's an old road, so it may be less than that? And then the second part of my question is, the problem with the end of the ramp, if you will, where it drops off, is, have we looked at that? Is that being caused because of the storm outlets, water outlet? Is it taking away sand, or do we know what's causing that issue? Because if I recall, that we redid that launch and new docks there about 7 years ago or so.
Through you, Madam Chair, if I may. I'm not familiar, I'm not aware of the width. I know it's fairly tight as it is there right now, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe it's 66 feet, just through the recent upgrades to the boat docks and the launching platforms that we just did. It's pretty tight on we'll say the west side of that road allowance. I'd have to confirm that. With respect to the erosion at the end of the concrete platform or ramp that extends into the river right now, I don't believe it's from, I think it's just naturally from the current of the river. The outlet for the storm sewer is actually downstream of the ramp, so any of the drainage and the outfall that comes through that pipe is actually washed downstream, so it doesn't have much impact to the ramp upstream of that area. So I don't know the true impact, other than perhaps just simply the condition of the material at the base of the ramp and just the flow of the river itself.
Supplemental, if I may, Madam Chair. So would it be a safe assumption then, Kevin, the water levels are certainly coming back up now, so the depth of the water above that ramp is going to be such that hopefully people won't be having to back in as far as they have over the last several years because of the low water table? Is that something that may just rectify itself temporarily until water levels recede again?
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't believe so. I think actually when the water levels were quite high a few years ago, operators were still backing up beyond that lip per se where that concrete ramp ends. So I think we'll see continued challenges with that location. We can look at confirming whether there's any interim stone that could be placed there through permissions with the Conservation Authority. But we need to be mindful of certainly just placing any form of stone. Again, the current of the river could simply wash that downstream and or kind of settle within the muck per se that's at the base of the river there. So we'll look into that interim condition, but ultimately we do have a design to address it long term.
Thank you. Any further questions for Director Lalonde? Seeing none, I will read the motion. Resolved that the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby recommend to Council to award the CCTV inspection of sanitary sewers for inflow and infiltration, RFQ number PW 2022-07, to Great Lakes Sewer Services Limited for the unit prices stipulated in the quotation bid. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor White, seconded by Councillor DeLeo. All in favor? Carried.
We just talked about an item in... Yeah, but the boat launch was in 4.5.2, isn't it? No, I was thinking, I don't know how much it really matters, but I'm just saying, like, because we didn't do anything. That was the piece that was pulled, but I think that the boat launch is in the next one. Am I right? In the projects? Right, yeah.
Okay, that one's pulled too, so did you have an item for 4.5.1 or a comment?
Sorry, I guess I had that under 4.5.1 boat launch design.
Yeah, no, it was under, it's just under 2.
Okay, so then we can, Sorry, so the motion, if that's your comments for the second one, that one is pulled as well, Deputy Mayor Snell, but the motion now is on the floor for the first one, and if no one else has a comment on it, we can just we can continue to vote on that one.
Thank you. So we're moving on to 4.5.2, the Capital Works Project Status Report. This has been pulled by Councillor White and Councillor Ego. Councillor White, will you begin?
I pulled this to talk about the boat launch, and my questions have been answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ego.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I pulled this because I thought it was a discussion, so it was a discussion about the Schoonertown Bridge. I can't see. So I apologize, Kevin, if I did not, have a heads up or whatnot. Still learning some processes here. So my question is, our comments, that the carryover for the repairs on the bridge, this has been an unexpected expense. So I guess I'm wondering, because it's so visible and people are asking, what went wrong, if you can say that? It's unexpected. So how much was already spent in 2022 on it? If you don't have these figures, this could follow forward at another time.
Certainly, I can share there wasn't a fairly specific report to this matter in terms of what the issues and the condition of the existing force main was. I will share that with you. In terms of the estimated carryovers, I think they're considerably higher than what you will see. There were delays with the work, and we finally pulled that last pipe earlier this week, so you'll see the contractors start to clean up the work site over the next week and a half or so. And then the full restoration, curb and gutter sidewalk, will happen in the spring. Those were preliminary numbers in terms of what we anticipated carryovers to be, but those will be updated for draft 2. And I can share that report with you, Councillor Ego, which has all the background information associated with that, if that's appropriate.
Thank you. If I could further ask then, and this is really a blind question, when it's so unexpected, should it have had a longer lifeline?
Certainly, we wish it would have a longer lifespan. This was a thin-walled polyethylene pipe, which is no longer fabricated, no longer used in the industry. So it was really a function of the type of material that was used in the late 70s and early 80s at the time, which was an approved pipe material. However, it's, these things happen. We were hopeful that certainly we'd get 60, 70, 80 years out of that pipe, and we did get 45, but I think the good news story is that we were able to mitigate any environmental concerns with spills in the river and that full pipe, because that pipe does convey probably 50% of the town's sewage from the west end of town. So if that did completely let go, it would have been catastrophic and quite environmentally concerning. So, but I can share that full report with you and go over any information you'd like to know after that.
Oh, thank you. That was just the discussion I wanted to have. Thanks very much.
Are there any further questions or comments? Therefore, I will read the motion. Resolve that Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the January 19th, 2023 Engineers Capital Works Project Study Status Report for information. May I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mayor Smith, seconded by Councillor White. All in favor? Carried. Moving on to 4.5.4, environmental. This report has been pulled by Councillor Belanger, the Drinking Water System, DWS Monthly Performance Report. Councillor Belanger.
Thank you, Councillor Thames. Yeah, I pulled this report because we have a outstanding record related to our drinking water. And in December was the only second non-compliance of the year. And if I read that correctly, it was a case of not that there was a problem, but that there was a measuring device that didn't reactivate, and we weren't able to measure for a short period of time, if I'm correct. But I don't believe our public necessarily dive into the reports to that detail, but I just wanted to, to be everyone aware that this was a pretty minor non-compliance, and that, to our knowledge, there was no impact to the quality of water, and we continue to have a stellar record related to our drinking water. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comment, Director Lalonde, necessary? No. Thank you. Any further questions or comments regarding this report? Therefore, I will read the motion. Resolve that Public Works Section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the 2022 monthly performance report for the town's drinking water system to the month end December 31st, 2022 for information. May I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor DeLeo, seconded by Deputy Mayor Snell. All in favor? Carried. Item 4.6.3, transit, has been pulled by Councillor White. Councillor White.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I had some emails back and forth between pulling this and today with Kevin, so I feel like we were talking about adding a bus stop to the casino site, and that work is underway and hopefully resolved soon. So, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Now that Councillor White's brought it up, I think it's important to comment because I have received calls and emails as well from citizens about a bus stop at the casino, and although I can appreciate that, and yes, we absolutely want to make that happen, I think it's important to point out that every time a new business opens in our community, we can't create a new bus stop. And I understand the importance of this one, however, and it brings me to another question, perhaps for a later date, and that question would be, how is it that we developed this site with a casino, especially a building or a business that we knew was going to be quite busy, and we didn't request of the developer or of someone to install sidewalks from our current sidewalk system to that area, because now not only don't we have a bus stop, but we have a real safety issue because there are no sidewalks. And when we get into the winter months, as we are now, once you leave the sidewalk at 74th Street, I think it is, no, I'm sorry, 70th Street, where the sidewalk ends, don't hold me to that street number, but you now walk on the roadway. And there's not even a side of the roadway really because of the snow when it does snow. So it's an important issue to get dealt with as quickly as possible. And I know Kevin and the team are working on trying to arrange. And so it's important for the public to understand as well. It isn't just as simple, and maybe Kevin can comment on this, but it's not just as simple as adding another stop. When you do that, it's going to affect the timeline of the bus schedules all the way down the line. And I have been told that the bus often sits on Lions Court for about 5 minutes waiting for the schedule to catch up to the bus, so maybe that's going to help Kevin and the team, but important for the public to know we're on it and we're doing our very best and as quickly as we can, but there's a whole lot that goes into just saying we're going to open another stop or create another stop. So maybe if Kevin could comment. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Director Lalonde.
Sure, thank you, Madam Chair, through you. A couple of answers, I guess. First and foremost, there isn't a sidewalk required and to be installed by the developer. It's just simply a function of their efforts to get the facility open and the onset of winter, mid-November, which happened this year. So there is a sidewalk extension that will happen beyond the roundabout. So pedestrian connectivity will be there. There's a bridge required and sidewalk along the frontage of the property, we'll say south of the steel beam guide rail. So it will be a safe pedestrian link with the casino. So we will have a paved shoulder along Molesley Street through to 71st Street. There's pedestrian facilities through the roundabout, and then there will be a new sidewalk extension to, I believe it's Joseph Street, the main entrance into the casino from Molesley Extension. There's also a secondary entrance that will be constructed on Lions Court, and you're accurate in your comment, Mr. Mayor, about we do have what we call layover time, where we build into the design of our transit systems. And that layover time, you'll see, let's say Route 2 will extend westbound to 71st Street. It'll queue when it has the time to queue, and then it'll make its way back eastbound to the Superstore. That queuing time, although sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes there isn't any time, just simply it's a function of construction, weather, traffic, depends on how many people get on and off the bus, or if there's cyclists, or if there's wheelchair needs which would delay the route. So we design systems with that layover time so we can maintain a reliable transit system. And there's nothing worse than a bus being not on time, but more importantly, we need to make sure that we can make those connections with the major hubs, transit hubs, so the superstore. We need to make sure we're on time so we can make the connection to whether it's the Collingwood Link, whether it's the county bus to Barrie, whether it's the Clearview bus to Stayner, or whether it's Route 1 to get to the east end of town. So there's certainly a lot of effort in there. I can tell you that our operator has done extensive time trials to try and make it work. The challenge is we cannot deplete that layover time. We need that time to manage the system on a day-to-day basis, not simply in the winter. You'll see a little more queuing in the winter, but it's not there in the summer months, and so we need to be consistent with that. We do see an opportunity with the system once that secondary entrance is constructed and open off of Lions Court, where the bus will not be required to travel out to the new roundabout, turn around and come in off of Moseley. Route 1 or Route 2 may be able to simply come up Lions Court, enter into Joseph, and then right out at Moseley Street, and it's probably saves about 4 minutes, and it doesn't seem like a lot, but it is when you only have 3 to 5 minutes of layover time to make sure you're meeting your connectors at the superstore. So that is certainly been looked at extensively. We see an opportunity with Wasaga Transit once the Lions Court access is constructed this year, I guess 2023. But at the same time, we've also engaged the county, and we've asked them to evaluate whether or not the county links bus in their efforts between Collingwood and Wasaga Beach, and whether or not they have the capacity or additional layover time to deviate into the casino, and they're looking at that next week, and we should have some information back from them. So certainly we were mindful even through the planning process to make sure there's connectivity, pedestrian connections, and even transit was considered in terms of future stops. But we've extended our system so much over the years, and we haven't, it's not ideal. We have an hour cycle time on one route and an hour and a half on another route, and an ideal cycle time would be 30 minutes. And so we have some limitations with our current structure, but definitely a priority for us, and we continue to look at solutions.
Thank you, Director Lalonde. Any further questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Snell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just curious too, having heard feedback from a lot of folks, especially in regards to Highway 92 at the Elm development, you know, with the amount of residential growth there. There's been express of concern around safety, where they're having to walk up that hill on a shoulder, basically, dark, and having to access the bus at the arena. Has there been any thought or consideration to extend down to Elm there to accommodate those residents?
If I may, Madam Chair. So in recent years, we've improved the connection. Although it is a paved shoulder, it never previously existed, so that connection on the north side of River West has purposely been extended to provide improved facilities to Village Gate and the Elm development. We can look at the street lighting design if there is more lighting required. I haven't had that comment brought forward about dark corridor, but that's something that we could certainly improve upon. With respect to transit, it's come up several times in terms of trying to accommodate. Very similar to the issues we're having in the West End to accommodate the casino. It's very similar to the East End in terms of the bus having limited ability to extend. What I can tell you, and we'll get into this afternoon, is as part of our budget deliberations for this year, we're looking to advance an on-demand software and technology and introduce that into our fixed route system, whereby Route 1, for instance, it extends up to Archer past Councillor Eagle's property in the East End, and sometimes it's very limited use. Can we deviate that to accommodate Elm or to accommodate Hometown or Park Place, and then resume the service from Walmart Westerly? And have more of a technology-based, app-based on-demand system where you can call, book an appointment, and we'll have some flexibility in that, the easterly leg of that, yet still maintaining that kind of east-west fixed system. So yes, we're looking at that, and we're trying to leverage technology and some of the funding programs around that. instead of just simply adding a third route. If we add a third route, we're completely restructuring our transit routes, but more importantly, we have to buy 2 more buses, and they're, you know, $175,000 each, and then we have a $350,000 operating budget to come along with that third route. So we're trying to leverage, you know, perhaps a $60,000 software solution that might make that feasible. So that is an early priority for us, to look at the feasibility and then establish some budget for capital and software solutions to help make that happen. And that's going to be a first for us in terms of the on-demand space in transit, which is where many service providers are going.
Thank you, Director Lalonde. Any follow-up? Deputy Mayor Snell?
Sorry, just a quick comment. I'm so excited to hear about that innovation. I think not only does that have significant savings potentially for the budget, but also for the environment. So I think that's fantastic.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any further comments or questions for Director Lalonde? No, having seen none, I will move the motion, or I will read the motion. Resolve that Public Works section of Coordinated Committee does hereby receive the Wasaga Beach Transit ridership statistics for December 2022 for information. May I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor White, second by Councillor Eagle. All in favor? Carried. And that concludes the Public Works section of Coordinated Committee. I'll pass the chair to Councillor Belanger for Developmental Services.
Thank you, Councillor Timms. I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but I'll just ask, does anyone need a 5-minute break at this point, or am I seeing yes? So if we, well, it's 7 minutes. Do we want to resume at 11 o'clock, or if we're all back earlier, then great, we'll start development service. Okay, welcome back to those that are watching online. We'll continue on with Development Service section. Deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings, we have none. Unfinished business, there's a few items. Is there any questions or comments from council on that? Seeing none, we'll move to the consent agenda. Currently, we have 3 items to be pulled. Items 5.5.2, 5.5.5, and 5.5.7. So reading the consent agenda, all items listed below will be approved by one resolution. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member requests it, in which case the item will be removed from the consent resolution and considered immediately following the adoption. So I think I maybe shouldn't have read that part, but I'll go that. Resolved that the Development Service section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the January 19th, 2023 consent agenda items 5.4 through to 5.6, and that all the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Timms and your worship. And all those in favor? That's carried unanimously. So I'll move to item 5.5.2. That was pulled by Deputy Mayor Schnell and myself, and I'll turn the floor over to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. The question that I had was in regards to the report regards to the County of Simcoe Official Plan Amendment number 7. And on page 186, oh, sorry. No, it's 185, I had in my notes. Anyways, it references about the redesignation of a number of parcels for future development. And I was just wondering if some more information could be provided specifically around those parcels and what's involved with that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the response to that question is there's a long story and a short story. I'll give you the short story. The province under Bill 23 is looking for more lands to develop, and basically the flavor is let us know where we can build more homes in Ontario sooner rather than later. So the construct of the growth plan and the resulting construct of the county OPA number 7 was based on pre-Bill 23 legislation. And in Bill 23 legislation, the growth plan said, stop the sprawl, let's protect our farmlands, let's protect our wetlands, and let's condense our growth areas so that we can contain costs and make it more livable. A very good and basic approach. And OPA number 7, that's what it does. So the growth plan says that in settlement areas or growth areas, and that's what Wasaga Beach is, everywhere inside our boundaries is a settlement area and an area for urban growth. But it has a caveat that says that any rural lands cannot be redesignated for development. So in circulating OPA number 7, the minister has said, okay, well, the rules have changed. We now have Bill 23. So in your comments to the province, before we approve County OPA number 7, let us know if you have any ideas on where we could put more new homes. So these lands that have been identified in Wasaga Beach, the rural designated lands, we kind of said, yeah, we know some properties where they are ready for development. Water and sewer is right there. The street network is right there. And we've identified those properties right in the report itself. So Mr. Minister, if you want to bring some rural lands within an urban settlement area into play sooner rather than later, those are your lands. So that's what we've done. And as an add to that, in County OPA number 7, they installed a section 3.2 point something, I can't remember the other number, maybe 10. And what they said in their policy was the county staff recognized the town staff position that those lands could and should be brought on stream. And the question is of the timing of it. So they put in OPA number 7 that clause that said that yes, those lands could be brought on stream subject to meeting certain conditions. And we actually assisted the county in preparing that clause. But then the minister came along, and as I say, he said, you know, show us where we can get more homes. We said, we know. So let's bring those lands on sooner. That's the short story. There is, I know that I've had some discussions with members of the public, and they're concerned that we should be retaining those green lands in their natural state. And enough growth is enough growth. We can intensify more with the lands that we have. So it's a valid argument, and it's worthy of note. But the way staff are looking at it is that the growth plan protects those prime agricultural lands and sub-agricultural lands in all of the agricultural townships. So our neighbors, Clearview and Springwater, they are primarily agricultural municipalities. And Wasaga Beach is by nature not an agricultural municipality. We are an urban municipality. So we thought, on the balance of things, it's probably worthwhile to bring those lands in line with growth sooner rather than later. And that's the genesis and the justification for that approach.
Follow-up, Deputy Schnell?
Thank you. I think it's a smart strategy, you know, to offer something where we're in a control position as well, because it definitely seems like a very aggressive bill where, you know, the province could come in potentially and say, we're just going to do this. So I think it's a very smart strategy. Thank you.
Councillor Timms?
Thank you, Chairman. I don't know whether this opportunity relates to the conversation, but it is my understanding that the province owns more than 50 lots along our waterfront, along Shore Lane, that are a result of the earlier expropriation efforts. The community is concerned that these properties are basically just left abandoned, and they're prime properties that could be developed for the town. Is there an opportunity within your report to discuss that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. There is an opportunity through the report. If council, committee and council would like staff to adjust the letter, we could put those lands on the table as well and identify them. And we have done so in the past with the province, so it should not be a surprise to them. But I think that's a great suggestion. It's a great opportunity to bring more lands on stream.
I had also pulled this item, so is there any other comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So through you to staff. And thank you, Councillor Timms, for bringing that up again, because it's a very important point. And I can recall Council from 14 to 18 making quite a deal out of the fact that the province owns, via expropriation over the years in the 70s, some very, very significant waterfront, and not just waterfront, north and south side of Shore Lane, properties that are worth millions of dollars. But more importantly, the fact that they haven't been developed, they've just been allowed to overgrow, and they're not maintained, so on and so forth. You know, if we look from the day those were expropriated to now, and the annual dollar value in tax revenue the town has not received from the province or from someone developing those properties, it is very, very significant dollars. So I would absolutely agree with Councillor Timms that we ask staff to bring a report and to add those specific properties to this list to the province with maybe some significant verbiage to those properties, and also that maybe staff could bring a report, which is probably already prepared from, again, a few years back, for council to see on the amount, the significant and the amount of those properties that are along our waterfront. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, our CAO, Andrew McNeil, would like to make comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can speak from a personal perspective. My family was one of the families that had our lands expropriated back in the late 60s, early 70s. And here we are 50 years later, and that land is sitting there with the weeds this high, prime waterfront land. My recommendation to council would be to have a motion put forward that actually seeks to take the lands out of the control of the MNRF and put it in the jurisdiction of Infrastructure Ontario. IO, for short, is the ministry that actually administers seeking highest and best value for provincially owned lands. I will share with you in discussions I've had with IO, they do not even know what the province owns within Wasaga Beach boundaries. So there's a disconnect between Minister Clark looking for lands to develop housing and actually understanding what they actually already own. So if we can help bridge and connect the dots for the province, I think that would be quite beneficial for the town of Wasaga Beach. So I would urge that motion to be put forward to make the connection with Infrastructure Ontario on this matter.
Thank you. I would look to the clerk just to, the best way to include the lands and the motion that was brought forth by the CAO. And Your Worship, do you have a follow-up comment?
If I may, Mr. Chair, thank you. Just further to Mr. CAO's comments, the town of Wasaga Beach also owns significant lands throughout our municipality. Many of those lands, or many acres of land, we own right next to the ministry's lands or the province's lands out by our sports park and so on and so forth. That the town is, it's highly unlikely the town is going to utilize those lands in the foreseeable future, if not maybe, you never say forever, but a long, long time. And so perhaps further conversation with the province that we do a land swap so as that those waterfront and shore lane lands, north and south side, perhaps could be assumed by the municipality in trade for acres of land that we're never going to use adjacent to lands the ministry already owns out in the further areas outside of town. Thank you.
I believe our Doug Heron would like to make comment. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For clarification then, the report that's before us deals specifically with a response to the province on County OP number 7. So this matter of the beachfront lands would be a separate matter, and we would address that at through a separate correspondence or approach or negotiation with the province.
So for clarification, we would include the lands to be available for potential residential development, but the rest of the conversation would be separated?
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand fully where Doug is coming from, but I think in this particular situation, if the minister's asking us to tell them specific parcels of land that we have that are developable now and are within our current infrastructure, I think it's important that perhaps we should be including some significant verbiage and whatnot in particular to the lands that they own in town, and at the same time, we could, I think, if we do that properly, we could also speak to land swap as opposed to we have them or you have them and they're here. I think we can cover it all off and get this back to the minister so as that it's before them as quickly as possible, and then we could add to that later in further conversation. That's my thoughts, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and, sorry.
So the resolution, as we've drafted it, is to recommend, that council recommend that we send the letter in its substantial form. And we wrote it that way in the event that there would be suggested edits. So I don't think we need to change the resolution, and we can add a paragraph and draw from the minister's comment to tell us where they can get more lands. So we'll add a paragraph into the letter specifically to that, and also suggest potential land swap. And what we can do is we can vet that letter through the CAO and through the mayor before we send it out, and save time so we don't have to come back to council.
Thank you, Councillor Blanger. I was just going to simply state that the resolution as it reads does in fact say substantial form, or even if we wanted to add as amended, but it does kind of incorporate that we will, if there are changes made at the table, those will be incorporated, and then as Doug said, that can be reviewed by the CAO or the mayor prior to going out, but we wouldn't have to add a new amending motion or anything further. We can kind of ride the coattails of that one there.
Thank you. So I had a number of comments related to this report, and I will tell you that I was contacted by several residents. First, to add comment to the expansion of the 3 rural areas or green areas, in my discussions with our Director of Planning yesterday, and I believe is accurate, is that, you know, any development still comes forward to council for approval, but it also strengthens our position in requesting to become a primary settlement area. And so the number of important things that I would like our Director of Planning to clarify is, one, the importance and benefit of becoming a primary settlement area for Wasaga Beach. Secondly, the report kind of reads like we're requesting to be approved for more population than what's being identified by the county. But in reality, what we're asking is for a correction to where we believe the population will actually be versus what their current projection is. And I'll have the director speak to that. But the other one was the MZO related to the West End. And MZOs sometimes have a bit of a negative connotation to them for members of the public because it bypasses some due process. But in this particular case, it was being interpreted differently than what the intent. So I would ask our Director of Planning to clarify that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on the expansion of the rural designation, I've already spoken to that, so with your permission, I'll speak to the primary settlement area topic and the MZO topic. The primary settlement area, I am one of the few people in town planning staff that have been around long enough to remember why primary settlement area is important. When the province first created the growth plan, they stipulated that in intensifying the urban areas, that they would target their investment to the primary settlement areas. So investment in infrastructure, investment in medical, investment in schools. The town, not being a primary settlement area, we may not benefit from those targeted investments. Now, the thing is, we are actually a primary settlement area. We meet every definition of what it is to be a primary settlement area. We have defined growth and intensification nodes. We've got plans in place for complete community. We intend to be an employment sector area, so a full-on complete community in every definition of what the province deems a primary settlement area. The only thing we lack is being labeled a primary settlement area. So the request, and we discussed this with the county staff when they were creating their OP And they fully agreed that there was no question that the town really should be a primary settlement area, and they offered their support in speaking to the province on this. So this request from the minister opens the door for us to make that ask again. It will require not just an amendment to the county official plan, but it would also require the province to amend the growth plan. But we know through Bill 23 that the province has every intention of amending the growth plan and the provincial policy statement and make them mesh with Bill 23. So there is that possibility. Councillor Belanger mentioned that being a PSA also has an implementation, kind of leans that we would be looking for more population. That's not the intent in staff in recommending we become a PSA. We know that we're going to grow as we always have. We're a destination, we're a desirable market. We've planned well for residential, and we are now planning for complete community. So the numbers, the population numbers that we've put in the report, we expect that to happen whether we're a PSA or not. It's going to happen. Can we absorb 44,000 people by 2051? Yes, we can. Can we absorb more than that by 2051? If we plan well, yes, we can. The critical thing is keeping the town's personality as a cottage town with trees everywhere and clean air, and that's going to be our challenge as we absorb this population. We can do it. So the rationale for the PSA is simply to make sure that the province keeps us in mind when they're looking to invest in urban areas. The second one with the MZO, we're not recommending that the province approve an MZO. We're suggesting that we open a discussion with the province about the MZO as a tool. And also, we're also looking at a CIHAO, Community Infrastructure and Housing Accelerator order from the province. Now, the rationale behind this is that MZOs have been typically used by developers to drive residential development projects or mixed-use projects. That's not why town staff are looking at it. As we grow, the hole that we are trying to fill in town is employment. And any lands that we've identified as employment lands are under pressure by the landowners to be developed as residential. So we thought, well, let's have a discussion with MMAH staff about the town requesting an MSZO, potentially, to protect lands for employment growth over time. And the idea there is that if we have employment, but it's retail, it's waiters and waitresses in restaurants, what we're looking for is high intellect, high paying jobs in town. So the MZO, our purpose in opening this would be to protect lands for good quality jobs. That's the rationale.
I'm going to go to our CAO, and then I'll go to Councillor Eagle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to advise Council, building on Director of Planning's comment, that Minister Clark and his staff are currently opening up the growth plan and provincial policy statement. So the time to be lobbying for that designation is now. It's a great opportunity, and I agree wholeheartedly. This is something that Mayor Smith will remember from the 2014 to 18 term. It's a label, but it's a very important label for this community to have to attract a high school and other provincial funding. So I think it would be smart to lobby hard for that. Thank you.
Thank you, and to Councillor Eagle.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so questions here or queries, curious. I understand there's also a designation as tourism. You have PSA and a tourism designation for areas in Ontario, is there not? Like you, and I'm not asking to be one, I've just been thinking something here.
In the growth plan, I don't recall that it identifies tourism. It speaks to industry, but where the councillor might be coming from is through the Ministry of Tourism and designated tourism areas. So, for instance, the Village at Blue or Niagara Falls, they are tourism attractant areas, and their economy is based on that. So there is a link to Wasaga Beach in wanting to be defined as a tourism area, and that's the entire strategy between Beach Area 1 and the Downtown Development Node per se, but primarily Beach Area 1. So I think there is a long-term goal to be defined as a tourism area, but I don't think that it's directly related to the growth plan and to the OPA number 7. It is a topic, but not directly related to what we're talking about with the province.
Okay, thank you. But, yeah, my question is, could we be both? We could be a PSA with our tourism designation at, say, Beach 1.
Yes, they're not mutually exclusive. We could have both economies in town, and we could foster both economies and foster that growth with the province and with the federal government as well.
Thanks.
Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It never ceases to amaze me that we are all of these things, and yet we don't have those labels, or we've lost those labels over time. And so, you know, the minister's zoning orders, the MZO, and getting the province to recognize us as a settlement area, I think it's very important for the public to understand, although they may lean towards, when they hear these words or these labels, that, you know, we're looking to become a large city, and you hear that on a regular basis from our citizens. And it's important to point out, and maybe we should be doing an education pamphlet around this or something for the public, or something on the town's website to explain this more in depth, because this is not about turning Wasaga Beach into a city. This is about making sure that we are positioned properly so as that the dollars and cents that are there on a regular basis annually, and with every new government, that we are getting our fair share. And quite frankly, I feel we've been missing out on that. And it's why we discussed it fairly at length from 14 to 18, and it's why we need to be not only discussing but acting on it today. There's a lot of funding available that we just simply don't qualify for. And unless we make these changes, we're not going to qualify for them. So I'm glad that we're having this discussion. I would really like to see more information for the public, because I want to reiterate to our citizens in Wasaga Beach, who are ultimately the most important people to us on this at this table. And that is, we're not looking to become a city. We're not looking to become even a town of 80,000 people or anything else. But we are looking to make sure that we're getting our fair share of the pie. And yes, there's only one taxpayer. But I can tell you that all day long, I would rather the province and the Fed spend those tax dollars here in Wasaga Beach than anywhere else. I can't reiterate enough how important it is that we have some more discussion on this, and that we put a plan in place to make this happen, and we reach out to the county. I know that we'll have their support in this, but perhaps we get that letter of support that we could even send maybe with this letter to the minister, so as that it's clear right away, as soon as possible, that you know, the fastest growing community in the country, probably, or in the top 5 for sure over the last 20 years, has been Wasaga Beach, yet we're not a settlement area, according to paper. So those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further to the mayor's comment, and again, to Director of Planning, is that it's important to note that we are fast growing. We're going to continue to fast growing. We meet every aspect of a primary settlement area, and we're going to require government grants and funding to keep the infrastructure up to date with the growth that's happening in our community. But for the public, who may or may not know, is our neighbors in Collingwood are a primary settlement area. They are currently maxed out on their water and sewer capacity. I believe we're right around 50% capacity here. So if you look at developments already approved and the potential population that will reside in those developments, that is what resulted in the projection that our Director of Planning made. So we're in a much better position to grow, and we require the province to invest in us, especially what I believe our vision is for our beachfront, is that the revenues that will be driven to both the province and the feds is going to be substantial. And I think the other key element in this, which we haven't talked about, is our strategy is to greatly improve our commercial tax base. We are still unbelievably reliant on residential property tax, and this plan will allow us to become much more balanced. So those were my comments. Is there any further comment? Yes, to our Jerry Marshall. I guess that's special projects.
Yes, yeah, special project. I just wanted to share, when you're talking to MZOs as well, Minister Clark won't sign an MZO unless it comes through council, right? So it's still, the decision-making on MZO still exists in the town of Wasaga Beach at your table. Just thought I'd share that as you're talking to residents, that might help assist in the conversation.
Thank you. Seeing no further question or comments, I'll read the, make sure I got this right. The Development Service Section Coordinating Committee, did I read that already? Sorry. Oh, I think that is the one, it's very long. The Development Service Section Coordinating Committee recommend to Council that it receive the staff information report summarizing the purpose and effect of County of Simcoe Official Plan Amendment Number 7, and that Coordinated Committee recommend to Council that it authorize staff to sign the letter summarizing the Town of Wasaga Beach comments attached as Attachment 1 to this report dated January 19th, 2023, in its substantial form, and to forward it as a letter to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Now, just a clarification to our clerk, I didn't quite read into that should we add a line just and to include information as to the direction of council?
Through you, Chair Belanger. So the way Doug worded it in its substantial form is often a clause we use when we're talking about things that might have elements of change, but if it would make you maybe feel a little more comfortable at the end of that, we can just add as amended on that final paragraph, and then Doug would know to incorporate the comments that were received today.
Okay, I will add as amended, just to be sure. So could I have a mover and seconder? Councillor DeLeo and Councillor Thames, and all those in favor? It's carried unanimously. And the next item is 5.5.5, which is a planning department matter, and I did have a discussion with our Director of Planning, so I will just turn it for him, over to him for clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This report was tabled by staff as a result of an email that the council received from a neighborhood association who live right next door to the proposed development. That email was sent to you back in November, and with a long list of concerns. So we thought there was merit, given that council was fresh on the job, to provide you with an update of the background of this particular development proposal, and that's the intent of this report. The report does not respond to the comments that were raised within the long email from the residents group. Those responses would come forward in the recommendation report when it does come forward for final approval, one way or another. And so that's really the intent of this report, to make you aware of the history of the development and what is currently proposed based on their latest submission. One thing I would like to note, though, is that the neighborhood group have been keenly interested in this application, and staff have gone above and beyond to keep them aware. Everything we know, they know. The day we get a new submission from the applicant, we share it the very next day with that group. So we've been trying to keep them very much in the loop on this planning process as it goes forward. And I think you can see that in some of the comments that they made, either through satisfaction or dissatisfaction with what's been resubmitted. But anyway, if, the file's not done yet. A recommendation will come forward at some point in the future.
Is there any other comment or question? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. That Development Service Section of Coordinated Committee receive the staff report regarding official plan amendment OP03/20, zoning bylaw amendment 207/20, site plan control SP06/20, and exemption to draft plan of condominium PC02/20 applications for the lands legally described as Lot 27, Concession 8, Block 196, Plan 51M-914, and Part 1 in Plan 51R-39252 for information purposes. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Eagle and Mayor Smith, all in favor? Carried unanimously. The final item pulled is Building Department Summary Report, item 5.5.7, and I'll turn the floor over to Deputy Mayor Schnell.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to speak to this report as a reminder to this table and to this room, the school crisis that we have. You know, as projects come forward and development opportunities and more residential growth comes forward, we have to be exceptionally mindful always that we are at a school crisis in our community. Our two existing elementary schools are over capacity, and as far as I understand, only have capacity for maybe one or two more portables. The new school, eventually when it comes on Sunnydale, will open likely full, and with two portables already existing. And each new development up until this point that we approve and where residents move into, those students are being bussed out of our community and attending other schools. So I really hope that we can make some progress in regards to capital funding in our community for schools if we want to maintain this level of growth. Thank you.
So to our building manager, I would ask that you maybe just give us a recap of December, but maybe what you see as the trend going forward.
Thanks, Chair Blanchet, and I'm happy to do that. Maybe I'll just point out first that what we tried to accomplish as we evolved our reporting over the last couple of years is to give a little bit more of a complete picture of the activity within the building department. So, you know, we try to sort of outline our legacy issues and what we're doing to resolve those, and we provide, you know, council and the public with some monthly tracking of those things. And then we also include our active permit files, the files that are coming online every month. And then we've always devoted a small section of our report to the applications that are in the queue and the momentum that is sort of sitting there. So I can point out that, you know, year 2022 was another stellar year in terms of residential construction. We surpassed all of our previous bests in terms of number of dwelling units created, the residential construction value, as well as the number of permits that we've issued in a year. But I think of particular note, and what Councillor Blanchet is probably alluding to, is that we don't have a lot of applications in our queue currently. So we're very much expecting that the numbers next year will see a very significant decline that will dip below what is what has been our historical average. And, I'll point out that historically we create anywhere between 230 and 260 dwelling units in the town of Wasaga Beach. In the last 4 years, that number is 1,100. 550 a year, so 1,100 between the 2 years. So we've really compressed 4 years of activity into 2 years. And in conversation with, our builders and developers, they're indicating that their sales offices are very quiet, and many are not planning to release any product next year. So, everybody is in a bit of a wait-and-see state right now, watching to see what's going to happen with the economy. And I can also tell you that, the industry is sort of breathing a collective sigh of relief as well, because the pace and the challenges associated with construction have been significant over the last couple of years. So I think everybody's going to use this as an opportunity to sort of retool and put some strategy in place, but we definitely are expecting to see our numbers decline significantly this year.
Yes, Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director Rogers. I think it's important to hear what we just heard, but also to point out that, this is not an anomaly to Wasaga Beach. We're seeing this right across the province, probably North America for that matter, and I don't personally think it's a bad thing. I actually think it's a great thing, because we need to catch up. And when I say we, I mean the royal we, not just Wasaga Beach. We need to catch up. And hopefully this will give our local developers a chance to catch up and give them the opportunity to be able to provide the product that they've promised to their customers, because I know that's a challenge, and not intentionally. That's not a slight to our developers. So we've got some great developers here in Wasaga Beach, but they need to catch their breath like everybody else. I think the other thing that's important to point out is that although we may see the number of housing applications dropping or slowing, our building department, I think, also needs a chance to catch their breath. And so I think it's important to point out that although we're going to see a drop in new applications, that doesn't mean our building department is going to be any less busy. I mean, if you read these reports on a monthly basis, I can't remember the exact number, but we are in the thousands of files and permits that have not had final inspections and need to be caught up on and cleaned up. I mean, that's there's a liability issue there for the municipality that shouldn't occur. And so although they may not be out inspecting brand new residents, they will, because they're going to be built. We may not have new applications. We're going to see a lot of new homes starting to be built this year. So they're going to be busy there, but it'll give them that opportunity, hopefully, to catch their breath. So I think it's important to say this and mention this so as that the public, come budget time, doesn't see, we're being told that the market is slowing and we're having less new permits come forward, so why do they need the amount of staff they have, or more staff, or whatever? And it's quite frankly because we're way behind. And we have been for quite some time. So thank you, Director Rogers, for that report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll read the motion. That Development Service Section of Coordinated Committee receives the Building Department Summary Report 5.5.7 Building Department Summary dated December 2022. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Eagle and, sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. Councillor Delio. I'll be okay. I was watching too much tennis last night. Anyhow, all in favor? Carried unanimously. And I'll turn the floor over, and I hope I get this right too, is General Service Section to Deputy Mayor Schnell.
Thank you very much, and we'll move on to 6.1, deputations, presentations, petitions, and public meetings. We have none. There's no unfinished business. There's no other agency reports. I have one item that's been pulled, 6.5.6. So otherwise, I'll read the consent, that resolve that general government section of Coordinated Committee hereby receives the January 19th, 2023 consent agenda items 6.4 through 6.6, and that the recommendations contained therein be adopted, excluding agenda items pulled from the motion and voted on separately. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor DeLeo, and a seconder? Mayor Smith? All those in favor? And it carries. So item 6.5.6 has been pulled by Councillor Belanger and Councillor White. I'll have Councillor Belanger first, please.
Thank you. This is a significant change to how we're going to conduct meetings, so I was hoping that we would have a sort of a summary or a conversation. And I know there was expectation related to public input, and I didn't know whether the mayor wanted to speak to what is going to be proposed as possible additional opportunities for our public, or whether you want me to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to speak to it, but I think maybe our clerk had something she wanted to add first.
Thank you, Mayor Smith, and through to you, Councillor Belanger. Perhaps maybe I'll take a few moments to just provide a little bit of an overview of the report, and then if there's still some questions or clarifications stemming from that, we can go over them point by point. But so as you noted, it would be a significant change to our procedural bylaw. So with each new term of council, staff conduct a review of the current bylaw, and we noted through, we wanted to incorporate some changes based on feedback from members, updated parliamentary meeting procedures, legislation, and other best practices that are across Ontario and other municipalities. So some of the changes that we've included in our proposed bylaw would be a new governance structure, which operates now as a combined council and committee of the whole, which we would call joint committee of the whole and council. So that would mean that we would commence the meeting as committee of the whole, and that would still incorporate the elements of coordinated committee. And from there, we would still have, our consent list and the general idea of the other meetings. And from there, we would move into council that would ratify items immediately right away that could be done, and this kind of helps us on a time frame basis, for items that if staff are seeking grants or urgent requests, public meetings, stuff like that, that we need to get approved quicker. It allows us to have that body of council immediately following it to move those items along quicker, and council is still able to separate items, put them over to a future meeting. They don't have to be passed at that time right away. So it would reduce the 3 meetings a month to 2 meetings a month. So it eliminates coordinated committee independently as its own body, but incorporates it under this new structure, typically to be held the second and fourth Thursdays of the month at 10 a.m. This also aligns meeting schedules with the Simcoe County Council, which will help for member efficiency here. So obviously our mayor and deputy mayor sit on meetings for council, so this lines up a structure for them during the week where they know that meetings are held and to ensure that all council is available. So as noted, we are amending the time from 2 p.m. currently when council starts to 10 a.m. We've corrected some inaugural first meetings of council to align under the Municipal Elections Act. So we have the creation of an open forum. So just to be clear, we are not removing the ability for the public to speak. It used to be called question and comment period. It is still very much so as an open forum now. Typically, the public was getting 15 minutes at council to come up to register. They are required to register for council to speak to a meeting on the agenda item. They still would be required to do so now, but there are 2 meetings a month where they are able to have this open forum for 10 minutes at a time. So it has increased the amount of time the public is able to come to register to speak. The open forum does come first on the agenda. So the public now would be able to speak to all items as they see that are presented before them. Typically, sometimes if they had a question about something on coordinated committee, that was a couple weeks before. Now they're going to be able to see items in real time at the meetings and talk to them at the table. And from there, if points are made or discussion ensues or council feels items aren't ready to move forward, they have the opportunity to still send them to a future meeting and push them over. There's nothing that says they have to be done at that meeting. Also, it will, yes, it provides ample opportunity from when the agenda is live to when they're required to sign up by. So the agenda still will be posted the week before, we're aiming for now. And then we encourage the public to sign up to iCompass because these agendas will come right to them in real time. They will have that opportunity to look at them rather than going to find an agenda. So we do encourage that subscription under our agenda software. That way things are getting to them right away. We are amending the consent agenda and just simply referring to it now as the consent list. So it's got the same overall goal, and it will allow members to refer items to the matters for consideration portion of the agenda. So much like you do now, we pull those items and then we discuss and vote on them separately. That's still a very similar course of action for those. Further amendment is the inclusion of correspondence where the clerk will be able to determine which items should be included on the agenda. This is simply due to the amount of correspondence we get, some of which goes directly to you already or doesn't require action or referral or anything like that. So this would just allow our department to kind of review them first and obviously get on the matters that are important to council or that require further direction or consultation with council. So that just gives us a little bit more ability to handle those items there. We are proposing the removal of the community announcements section that was previously under section 5.11. So this is simply, again, more for efficiency. The intent of the agendas are definitely to move council business forward. So the town does post these elements on our website and socials, and obviously, in this day and age, we do see that members of council typically start to have their own websites or social media that they can post these events and share to the public. So we thought that they could continue down that route. We also are proposing the removal of our calling of committee section. So typically you would see the CAO at those monthly meetings read out those meetings, dates and times. We do have this all posted on the website as we are required to. So especially if you are subscribed, you'll get that anyways, but the public is able to see a full schedule of meetings hopefully for the year. Once we establish how we're handling the procedural bylaw, they'll be able to see that laid out for the year. And the new amendment further as notices of motion will include a section called council requested staff reports. So obviously these are matters that typically council would bring a notice of motion and they have to wait till the end of the month for that one moment to have that presented, and then that gets passed on to the next meeting for decision. This is an opportunity for council to have those presented at the meeting right away, voted on. They would need a mover and a seconder to be established to have that item brought forward, and that would be directed to a certain director or member of staff. And we would also limit those so that also staff, with regularly bringing forward their monthly reports, don't have too many additional ones, but more so an opportunity for those important items that council feels are being brought to their attention, are time sensitive or urgent matters. It gives an opportunity to work with staff on those. And finally, we removed the requirement of a motion to extend a meeting past 10 p.m. because hopefully we're not here from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. But having said that, we aren't required to have that, so that motion has been removed. So basically, these overall changes are just elements to, one, for staff, we find that they will simplify a lot of the stuff that was required in previous meetings and agendas. It is one less meeting a month, but it is more ability for staff to not kind of be told, well, yes, that's something for council, but you got to wait to the last meeting, the last Thursday of the month to get that through. Nothing can be, passed or ratified or move beyond that point until we have that one meeting. So it really is going to help staff in the realm of things like grants and public meetings and time-sensitive matters. So it's also going to ensure the public has appropriate notice. We want to allow for council to have rapid response to these changing legislative timeframes and to also have better use of staff time and resources. So the proposed procedural bylaw and meeting structure would necessitate fewer meeting dates, as we mentioned, and Again, it will provide additional opportunities to present items for consideration and to move business forward. So my final comment would just be that today we would receive, questions and comments of council, but we also will be having a public meeting at next week's January 26th meeting to receive any comments or questions from the public as well.
Wow, I can't believe I made her do that. That was very comprehensive and very fast, but as being on my third term at council, maybe just, some examples for the public is when you had more meetings in committee of the whole, particularly that could be sometimes close to council, if something was referred back to staff, there was a lot of times there wasn't enough time to get back to council. So it wasn't uncommon for decisions to take sometimes 6 weeks or even 2 months, where this will give us an opportunity to make decisions, even on a referral, that it would only be a 2-week delay, and that we would be able to move the business of the community forward. I think one thing certainly Mayor Smith and I know in previous terms is 4 years can go very quickly, and we want to benefit this community as much as possible, as quickly as we can. And I also believe there's some pretty significant efficiencies for staff resource that we're eliminating. Every time something's moved forward, it's a duplication of effort. There's an administrative function to all of that. And I guess it remains to be seen how much efficiency we can gain through this. And I want to thank Mayor Smith making the recommendation based on his experience on county council, because I believe this is the format they use, and so I'm very much looking forward to
it. Go ahead, Mayor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could just make a few comments. First of all, thank you, Laura, for that in-depth diatribe, if you will, in order to help the good folks at Wasaga Beach understand why these decisions are being made and these changes are being made. And there's a couple of points I think that are very important. And the first one I want to start out with is that this is not to hurry things along. This is not to hide anything. This is to simply change the process so as that it is as efficient as possible. And I can tell you that in our first short term here, we have all heard, I think, from several different staff members that it would be nice to speed up the process in such a way that it's efficient and that we're not having staff duplicate things and workload. And we see that. And not just us, Wasaga Beach, but this is a common issue, I think, throughout many municipalities. And so it was very apparent to me, being on county council in the past, that the process there was so much more efficient. And they were able to move the business of the county along at a very good pace, and limit the amount of downtime, if you will, when items were referred back or new reports were requested because of the way the program worked. It's important to point out as well that although there may be one less meeting in total in a month, probably won't happen, because I'm sure there's always going to be other special meetings that'll be called if the business requires it, and that's at the call of the chair to do that at any time. And the meetings, if you haven't noticed already, I know staff and council have, we may have fewer meetings, but our meetings are considerably longer. We're having fulsome discussion, and we're having in-depth reports from staff, which is just phenomenal. So it's not less of a workload. It's not that council is lazy. It's that we want to make our community efficient and we want to move the business along. The other thing that I think is important to note is that there will be more time now for the public, having 2 council meetings a month to be able to speak within council chambers. And keep in mind that council meetings are meetings of council. They are not public meetings. If we need a public meeting, we host a public meeting, and that is a meeting for the public that we chair and host for them, but it's their opportunity. So there is more opportunity within the process for the public to not only be here in this House, but to speak to items if they wish. And the other thing that we'll be looking to do in the near future is add once or twice a month a time frame where we'll go through the list of members of council, and 2 members of council will be available once or twice a month here at Town Hall on whatever given days, evenings, or afternoons, maybe on weekends sometimes, that the public can come in and speak to those 2 members of council about any concerns they may have or make any recommendations they have. Those members of council will compile a list and bring that back to council for consideration, so as that the public does have, if they wish, time to sit down specifically with members of council to bring that information forward. I can assure the public that this council is intent on being very open, very transparent. As we move through many different processes, I'm sure you'll see a lot more public engagement and public meetings, which I think is very important. And the last thing I'll mention is that not only is this going to streamline the system and increase the efficiencies, and again, we've heard this from staff. This is not council coming up with an idea, and as you can tell from our clerk's explanation, they are always thinking. It's also, in my opinion, a tax savings. When you look around this room, we have some very highly qualified people who are bright, and they are paid quite well, and that's not a slight to them. They absolutely deserve it. But the more time they sit in this House and not in their office doing their work, it's costing taxpayers dollars. One change you may have noticed already is that each council meeting now we have all our directors at the table during these meetings. And that is so, again, we don't have to refer things back should a director not be here who can give us the information or make the decision that may be required at the time. And I can tell you, sitting up here looking down on our directors and our staff is a good thing, because I can tell you as the mayor, it makes me much more comfortable and much more confident as well. And our clerk and our deputy clerk is here in front of us so that they can assist us throughout the process at any given time. So it's working well. We're doing this in order to enhance the business of the town of Wasaga Beach. As Councillor Belanger mentioned, 4 years is an extremely short period of time. I know that I've told my daughters on many occasions when they look at our beautiful grandchildren, don't blink, because your granddaughter or your daughter is going to come to you and break your heart and say, I'm moving out, Dad. And so, council members, I can tell you the same thing. Don't blink, because 4 years will be gone in a minute. So I'll end with that. And again, as always, I'll thank our staff for all the hard work they do. And if I may, Madam Chair, it might be a good time to point out some of the changes here. As you can see, our fire chief, Craig Williams, is here, and a little earlier in the meeting, we met our new deputy chief, Dan Bell. But I think very important to point out, we have our interim clerk and deputy clerk who are doing a phenomenal job. And last but not least, our new CAO, Mr. Andrew McNeil, is joining us here, and we are absolutely thrilled and pleased to have you on board as well, Andrew. So welcome. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor White?
Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I just really want to just emphasize just a little bit stronger the council staff report section in the new procedural bylaw. That came about as conversations with the manager formerly known as the CAO, and Ellen and myself, as we looked at ways of speeding up the process of getting items onto the agenda that might not have been thought about maybe by the mayor. So that's great, and it's transparent because it's done here in council and voted on immediately. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Okay, seeing none, I'll read the motion. That the General Government Services section of Coordinated Committee receive the proposed new bylaw to govern the proceedings of meetings of Town Council and its appointed committees for information. Further, that committee recommend to Council that a bylaw be brought... That's it. I'll have a mover. Councillor DeLeo, and seconded by Councillor Belanger. All those in favor? And that passes. There are no additional items, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.